You clicked on this video to find out if getting into a runway show is as crazy as you imagine. Well, welcome to the most raw, exciting, absolute best, and the most exclusive look at Paris Fashion Week on Earth.
Yohji, hi. I asked them if we could spar, do karate, but they said no.
Settle in, get comfortable for an insane run-through of the world's single most inaccessible event, Paris Fashion Week. We flew over the ocean to get to Paris, got in a taxi where we then flew to the Italian countryside. We take you to every single runway show that matters and help you unlock the truth behind the household names and the best design talent in the game.
Danny has been a huge part of kind of what's helped me to be able to be like, this is crazy. And you should pay attention to it because it is so crazy.
Subscribe so you don't miss any more of these videos. Like this video if you love fashion as much as I do, which is unlikely.
And then you're just like 30 seconds away from beginning to know.
Brought to you by the generous support of members on our Patreon. Are we ready for a premiere? Here we are, friends. It's the start of something new at the house of Givenchy. I would like for everyone to meet Sarah Burton. You're probably already familiar with her work, but this is the first time that we've gotten the opportunity to talk about her on the channel, so we're going to give a little bit of context. Sarah Burton's career has been a very literal story of slowly climbing the ladder of success in the fashion industry. To give you a little idea of how she climbed, Burton got her fashion start as an unpaid intern for Alexander McQueen, like the man himself. She was his right hand at the McQueen brand, then she was with him for his brief tenure at Givenchy, and she was the obvious choice to succeed McQueen after his tragic and untimely death. Since that time, Burton has faithfully reinterpreted McQueen's body of work for 18 years before herself departing the brand. But during that time at McQueen, Sarah Burton developed into her own powerhouse of a designer. It wasn't just like, I'm here telling you about my former boss. She became her own person there. And so when she had left the brand and when they announced that she would be coming into Givenchy, Daniela and I were very excited about that appointment. This show was one we had looked forward to for a long time. Outside of her undeniable talent that's enabled her to rise through the fashion design ranks and past fashion's greatest glass ceiling, it's always felt as though her talent was spoken about in relation to her history as McQueen's brightest pupil. So while she is in charge at Givenchy, here is a promise that we would like to make as a channel. We will be actively discussing Sarah Burton's work on its own terms. It is time to remove Sarah's work from under the shadow of Lee McQueen. So unless we catch some little reference to Lee's work that does need to be mentioned for a moment, we will be primarily focused on what Sarah has to say. Givenchy has spent its time since Riccardo Tisci's departure trying to find out what to do with its haute couture heritage and how that reconciles itself with being the house that produced what's easy to argue is the best take on streetwear under Tisci's tenure. Other designers have tried to toe this line between couture and streetwear, this very desired combination of high and low that had a tendency to make anything low look too stuffy and anything high too uninspired. My single favorite development about Sarah Burton's Givenchy is that she is not trying to make it more approachable. Givenchy at its core is a couture house, and Sarah Burton wants to focus on that first. And I love the Rottweiler tees as much as the next guy in his mid-30s, but the focus on couture makes me incredibly happy. Someone else can worry about jeans. Sarah Burton wants to stay focused on her tailoring kickflips, a staple of her body of work that was prominent throughout the show here. If you take Burton's history with inventive, exciting tailoring all on its own, it's more than strong enough to lead this brand. The skill is absolutely there. This show took place at the historic brand headquarters on Avenue Georges V in Paris, the address almost as iconic as the brand itself. You walk inside a very cozy runway space, only 350 seats, that was attempting to recreate the feeling of being in a salon environment the way that you would have been during the days of the house founder, Hubert de Givenchy. The stools themselves were made to look like pattern envelopes. They actually told us a really fascinating story about this. They recently found original patterns from Hubert de Givenchy's first haute couture show hidden in the walls of a former atelier location. That is fucking crazy. So that's how the audience, as well as us two, found ourselves sitting on a pile of pattern envelopes. Humble paper materials that hold the keys to create the highest fashion. Now, all that being said about high and low earlier, I'm actually really happy with how contemporary Burton's take has been. You cannot confuse any of these clothes as being remnants of Hubert. And you can see that super clearly with this. This is my single favorite look in the whole show. This black leather bomber with a zipper shawl collar that cinches at the waist with a large belt. Hubert would have never made this. But at the same time, this look feels like it can't come out of any house other than Givenchy. It has this contemporary feeling with the execution of the zipper neck, but it's balanced so well with the classical elegance in this traditional line. But all the seemingly traditional silhouettes in this show are more than they seem at first glance. This blazer dress, one of the strongest parts of the show, uses the height of a collar to frame the face of the wearer in this very haute couture type move. Burton seamlessly brings that into a dressy, ready-to-wear context. Strapless mini dresses feature this couture-like back, almost like a train that got chopped off. Again, a believable blending of couture into ready-to-wear. But in case you don't think that she's committed to the couture enough, she gives you that full train in a high-low white lace dress later in the show. It's this great balanced give and take to make these clothes elevated without seeming like we're just going back to 1952, but without forgetting that this couture past is crucial for the brand right now. Really solid balancing act here. Another contemporary approach to the couture look that I loved was the necklines on these looks. Imagine you show up to like weekend brunch with the girls wearing this bodysuit. Absolute power move. It totally stays in the realm of simplicity, but is like impossible to ignore. Opera gloves are another haute couture staple, but Burton makes me want them for me when she makes them in leather and then extends them all the way up the bicep, around the shoulder, and then ties them off. Just real quick, in case you missed that, what I am saying is that leather opera gloves, which are just kind of supposed to come up to like here, those keep going behind her and then they tied it into a big knot and then there is this flourish of extra leather that forms a shape behind her. This is fucking gorgeous. I am obsessed with this move. I really hope that she ends up doing more with this idea. Other highlights include this cosmetic compact dress, which was delightfully girly, sweetheart neckline, bra tops, and OMG, is that a Dude to Cash? We were thrilled with this collection. It usually takes designers 4 shows to get fully on track to what they're going for, lay that foundation, but this debut has been one of the most airtight, concrete debuts from any designer that we have seen in person. If this is just the beginning, I cannot wait to see where Sarah Burton takes us next. I loved the show. Huge win for Givenchy. Congrats, everybody. I have a personal litmus for how opulent a piece of clothing is. For me, at least, opulence is about myself. It's not a performative thing that I do for other people. It is something that is fully indulgent and just for me. And so my personal litmus is I think about how opulent is this piece of clothing? I imagine myself alone at my house, watching a movie, sitting on the couch with my feet up, wearing that article of clothing. When I imagine that, how opulent do I feel? So if I think about that scenario while wearing this specific piece, I truly feel like I would be the most opulent bitch alive. So it passes the test. It is crazy to me how much the Owens Corp team is able to improve on ideas when they're given a little bit of extra time. I freaked out about the men's versions of these jackets a few weeks ago during our men's Paris Fashion Week mega video. I meant it when I said that I couldn't think of anything cooler that I had seen by Rick Owens. But you just give them a little bit of extra time and they meaningfully improve on that thing. This has now replaced the other one as the coolest thing. It's the coolest one. This is it. This show is called Concordians. Rick is doing autobiographical shows at the moment. This is the 6th one. Each new title comes with 2 runway shows, one for the boys, and then women's comes directly afterwards. We started with Porterville, then we had the Hollywood shows, and now we've reached the end of the Concordians shows. And we're now waiting until the summer when the next episode of the saga is introduced, along with the Rick Owens retrospective exhibit, which will take place right across the street from the legendary Palace de Tokyo, a place that has become so enmeshed with Rick Owens that there is a Wi-Fi router there called Owens Corp. And every time before these shows start, I launch the settings app and my ass is like, Sumatra chickens, Larry Legaspi, all caps, no spaces. Michelle is a cutie $123 sign. We talked a lot last season at the men's show about how dialed in Rick's product is becoming. He's always made desirable things, but I think the success of the company has led him to be able to do product development on a level that can rival the absolutely massive houses that he's competing with in Paris. They're iterating on what works, tinkering slowly and steadily to improve while continuing to release new and exciting designs. I'm happy to report that dependability and rhythm seems to have inspired a bit of chaos this season. Rick is a trained pattern cutter. That was the technical skill that he brought to the table long before he thought about making his own company. Pattern cutters are control freaks, and creative directors are control freaks, so it's good to see elements of unpredictability worked so consistently into this collection. Here's an incredible example. Do we remember what chaps are? It's the protective gear that you wear over your legs anytime you're riding a horse or, just anytime you got to lay down the law. Side note, chaps are Mexican in origin, and Rick is half Mexican. These chaps are already so chaotic that when layered with the right shorts, the right underwear, I'm not saying this. These chaps are already so chaotic that when layered with the right shorts, the right underwear, or the right clitoris, they would command a room completely. Probably command a whole city block, to be honest. My point is that these chaps introduce a level of visual chaos that's good to see at this stage of Rick's career. We already know that the store is going to have completed product. I mean, like, the new offering for this show that's kind of like the special new thing is that some of the flight jackets are lined in leather. The lining is leather. Like, every time you put the jacket on, you get to slip your wrist through a leather tube. So yeah, finished, professional, consistent product is not a problem at Owens Corp at this point. So I think that they're adding in chaps like this or these chaotic slash leather tops in order to introduce a little bit of unpredictability. I can't even fully decide with this look where the chaps end and the kiss boots begin. It's one of those looks where the clothes appear to be eating themselves. I mean, name another designer in their 60s that is introducing this level of chaos into their work. I will always love men's shows by Rick, but the women's shows have had this secret sauce that makes Owens Corp what it is, a unique perspective on elegance. All the respect for traditional old world ideals of beauty are present here, but there's enough defiance and shit thrown in to complicate it to perfection.
It has been 1 year since we've gotten to see Courrèges, optimistic futurism. It used to be like a whole genre of fashion back in the 60s. And then as we got more and more bleak about humanity's future, it kind of disappeared as a genre. Then they brought in Nicola Di Felice and everything got kind of optimistic. It looks very sleek. It does look very futuristic, like in the way that like Apple always looks futuristic. But there's this like kind of sexy optimism to it. It's nice. Daniela would like to list a correction that it is more cunty slay optimism. So
I've recently begun looking for new movies coming out that are focused on the future that aren't like pew-pew sci-fi stuff, The only thing they can seem to agree on, these movies, is that the future is going to be super duper bad, but there's not a lot of agreement on like what type of bad it's going to be. So while films are still trying to figure this out, Nicola Di Felice's work at Courrèges is the only work that I've seen that wants to make sense of our future without making a value assessment. Di Felice manages to be the only fashion designer and this the only work that has convinced me that our future is not going to be either good or bad. This era at Courrèges is trying to communicate just what might be. In line with this idea, Di Felice's Courrèges has happily embraced the concept of time. Unlike other brands who use their collections to point out the strange times we're currently living in or are longingly trying to recapture their own heritage, the passing of time at Courrèges is just a fact. Because like in his Spring 23 show, which was our first with the brand, Di Felice placed his audience in a giant hourglass. Models walked in the sand as it poured from the top. This Spring 23 show in particular focused on this idea of rebirth. If you've watched the channel for any length of time, we've talked about how the cyclical nature of the fashion industry comes from this need for designers to recreate an entirely new collection of clothes every 3 to 6 months. It's very, very fast. So rebirth tends to be a theme that we see a lot in fashion. When Daniela and I first reviewed that Spring 23 show, it felt super obvious to us. I mean, The path that the models walk is circular, sand is pouring from the ceiling, and the music that Di Felice custom makes for all of his shows features a voice that in this show was saying, starting again, starting again. There was this focus on constant churn and continuity. There's this focus on cycles. In the Fall 23 show, it's obvious that Di Felice was talking about our experience online. I mean, the first look is literally walking with a phone in her hand. When we talked to Nicola after the show, he told us that modern tech allows us to see ourselves in other people more now, hence the round mirrors on all the looks. Like, at the end of the day, it's just a true fact that human connectivity has increased as a result of, social media, and it's just kind of a reality of the time that we live in, so much so that it's made its way from the hands of every single person in the room onto the runway itself. Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? Courrèges is not forcing you to decide about that, and it is certainly not going to decide for you. It's not making a value assessment, it just is. Courrèges is not wagging its finger at you about your hours of screen time on your phone, and it's also not just giving you a blanket pass either. Courrèges as a brand acknowledges that it's occupying the same time as you, wondering how to make the clothes that accept our reality. Courrèges believes that this acceptance is the only way to move towards the optimistic future the brand is so occupied with creating. No other brand is thinking about this concept when trying to make their clothes occupy a particular time. I've often said that Di Felice is the best commercial designer working, and I think that I might not have given him enough credit. He is executing conceptual fashion. This is even conceptual fashion on hard mode. Di Felice is trying to artfully wrap up the body in ribbon, specifically a blow-up life-size piece of confetti. These always get a little bit busted up because we take them back in our luggage and stuff, but the invitation itself for the show was literally just like a single piece of confetti. So yeah, the invitation featured a single piece of confetti, and then when you walked in the room, you saw confetti all over the floor. The color palette and the pinks and the reds in the collection also found their way into the confetti itself, which was slowly picked up into the air by models walking, swirling lightly, building on itself until a mechanical force began creating a very contained confetti wind tunnel that the models then walked through. It's so weird when we're recording these and there's information that like other people have like totally failed to point out online. It's like y'all have had weeks at this point, but no one talked about how there was such a difference between the way that we were experiencing that show with our eyes and the way that we experienced it when we reviewed footage on our phone and on the camera. When you're sitting in the room looking at it, the whole thing looked like a really like contained New Year's Eve party or something. It was really visually impressive while you were in the room. But then when we went back to review it on our phones and in the camera, we were like, oh, it doesn't look right. This doesn't look the same. And then we realized that it's supposed to be a different experience for your eyes and for a screen. On the screen, it looked like snowy pixels. And in a way, the only people who got the real, full, unedited experience of what this show was supposed to look like were the people who didn't physically attend. You are getting a better experience of this show right now than I got from being there. What an incredible concept. That is so in line with, honestly, Andre Courrèges would be so proud. But for the clothes themselves, as far as the confetti inspiration, was the shape that is folded around the body. Di Felice, more than other designers in our landscape at the moment, is pretty deeply inspired by gestural clothing. And that just means that the clothes speak to the way that the clothes are worn or put on. Me being able to have a pocket right here in my jacket and holding my arm in that way, that is gestural design. Thinking about like the crook of my arm, and so that's what gestural design is. In Felice's work, we see that time and time again, most notably with the clit pocket from Fall 2024 and many other designs that take how we interact with the clothing and bring that into the design process of the clothing itself. This season is no different, with Di Felice taking a lot of inspiration from the effortlessness of putting on a scarf. That wrapping becomes halter dresses with scarves, long sleeves, and even a bralette. For how much variety there is in the execution of his ideas, it all ends up being incredibly cohesive and interesting. Another gestural part of the show is what Courrèges calls their 1-minute silhouette, which seems to be inspired by the idea of like rushing out of the house, right? In these dresses, it's like the model hasn't fully zipped up the dress and it's like falling off her arm a little bit. A variation on the same idea is taken into these many looks, which seem to poke at the idea that you put your head through the wrong hole while getting dressed really fast. It's actually brilliant. I've never thought about the fact that a head hole could turn into like this super cunty cold shoulder, but it really works well, I think. We see this idea executed with many different opacities and a lot of different textures. A new introduction to Courrèges that I love seeing is this unique confetti-like tweed. The textures here appear almost like you're reading Morse code, like dashes and dots and stuff. I never thought tweed could look futuristic in this way. Tweed is usually pretty old-fashioned looking. I've actually never seen a futuristic proposal for tweed, but it's pretty subtle, and I love this being part of the brand overall. It's a really good contrast for the like white vinyl perfection that we usually associate with André Courrèges' designs. Other details include these feather tops that had beautiful movement to them. I feel pretty comfortable sitting here saying I've seen a lot of feather tops in my time as a fashion critic. This is my favorite one. That is the best execution of a feather top for women that I've ever seen. These bags with the ability to be slipped over the wrist like a bracelet, which struck me as also quite gestural. And these sunglasses that were an archival redesign from the brand founder, André Courrèges. De Felice told us in the past very tellingly that he's never copied Courrèges' old patterns. He makes his pattern cutting team redo every pattern in order to modernize them and look for ways to improve upon them. This approach in how to use the brand's heritage has only seen Nicola push the house of Courrèges forward, always towards the future, which strikes me as the only way to properly update the brand. I can't wait to see what else De Felice has in store for us next season. Hard gear shift time. We took 24 hours off of Fashion Week to go to Italy with Celine. This is our first time ever covering Celine on the channel, and we are so excited to introduce them to you in this specific way, with an up-close encounter of their craftsmanship. Our goals on this channel are to get you more plugged into fashion than any other publication on earth and show you as much as we are able to. We believe that that gets you far more invested in and connected to fashion as an art form. So when they asked us to come take a look at how they make their coveted handbags, we couldn't turn it down. Sounded great. So off we went for a 24-hour adventure to the Italian countryside to visit the Celine atelier. We have a lot to show you, but we can't show you everything in order to respect the privacy of the employees. And I do feel like I walked away from this trip having learned something that I kind of didn't realize before. Obviously, every luxury brand in the entire world is like tripping over themselves to assure you that they're all about high quality and everything that they always do is just perfect, perfect, perfect all the time. But amongst all the marketing and PR that just kind of comes standard issue with everyone who has ever showed at Paris Fashion Week, Celine and everybody else, I was able to learn something that I didn't realize. When you as a company want to make things by hand at scale, the biggest issue becomes consistency. If someone makes a complicated object by hand, complicated like over 80 pieces for each bag, then it's just a fair assumption that the handmade objects are going to be different between each other. There's going to be variations on each one. And those are going to especially be obvious to us because like the overwhelming majority of the objects that we handle on a daily basis are just like injection molded plastic. They are perfect. They're like the nature of their being is consistency and perfection. So for a company that insists on incorporating as much handwork as possible into their final product, consistency becomes this complicated puzzle. And for those of you who are sitting there thinking like, I actually like it when there are big differences between like my version of the product and everyone else's version. I agree with you. I actually own some stuff. I'm wearing some stuff like that right now. But that does not work at scale. When you're making thousands of them, the nightmare is that a woman comes into your store, buys this very expensive bag, and then comes back 3 days later and was like, hey, so my friend has this same bag and the color on hers is like way more brilliant and vivid. I want a full refund right now. A lack of consistency just causes a lot of problems when you are a global powerhouse luxury company. The good news is that with a thoughtful and rigorous prototyping and manufacturing process, a great deal of consistency can be achieved through hand creation, and we got to see that whole process during our visit. So it starts with what leather they're actually picking. They only select the leather hides that have no blemishes from the tannery, but hides without blemishes can have a great deal of variation between them, even if there are no marks. Small amounts of color changing from one side of the hide to the other, even the width, like the tiny little space of how tall the hide is, that can change radically from one side of the hide to the other. Here you can actually see this technician checking the exact width in multiple places here before he cuts the piece out to ensure that there is absolutely no variation whatsoever, which is especially difficult with this generous aniline leather that will eventually develop this really beautiful wear over time. Aniline leather looks awesome if you've been like kind of beating it up for a couple of years. Here is something that I like about Celine's handmade process. If there's a small variation in the leather, they have the capacity and the time to choose where to cut the pattern piece to see if they still can use that hide by placing that bit of variation underneath the hardware of the bag. You can see here with this tool, they actually know where the hardware is going to end up going so they can make that decision. I love that Celine does this. It's economical, but it's also just common sense. It's a concept I feel like can get lost very easily when talking about the ephemeral idea of luxury. I get a little bit frustrated when consumers' idea of what luxury is that every little thing is being handled such that it becomes just like ridiculous and like a parody of itself. Like, you don't need to put the napkin in my lap, dog. I've got it. Thank you. I personally adore the presence of human elements in luxury. Their internally trained artisans have enough time to make good decisions, and where and how that time is used determines what kind of luxury company they are. They aren't rushing. They have time to be able to examine their work very closely and make great decisions that are all in line with their elite standards. Celine's goals seem to be as far away from stuffy luxury as possible. They focus on just fine-tuning their process to achieve consistent perfection, and they care about that most of all. We gained some very memorable perspective about Celine during this trip. The brand seems wonderfully down to earth and focused on the right stuff. This season, in a school gymnasium, Enfants Déprimés made a film. Not literally. They made a collection of clothes that was presented as a runway show. But the founder and creative director, Henry Alexander Levy, executes those shows like he is making a film. He actually always has, even back when ERD was a very different brand than it is now. And this cinematic style of working aligns really well with the philosophy of filmmaker Harmony Korine, who said, quote, "I mean, all I care about is just scenes. I mean, the only thing I remember in films, I never remember plots. I can't stand plots. I don't feel like life has any plots. There's no beginning, middle, and end. And it always upsets me when things are tied up so perfectly. What I remember from films are scenes and characters," end quote. Scenes and characters are certainly what we find in this ERD show, which began and ended with massive cardboard tanks. We should get something out of the way right here. ERD as a brand discusses a lot of pretty difficult topics, and the difficulty of those topics, the fact that they do make us feel a little uncomfortable, that's part of the overall aesthetic of ERD. It's our job to interpret and talk about those difficult topics where it's relevant to the art. But I do want to be super clear, Daniela and I are not spokespeople for ERD. And if someone watching this video is upset or kind of put off by some of those topics that we end up discussing here, I would respectfully ask that you take that up with them. I cannot help you with those things. Let's get a lay of the land of this show. Enfants Déprimés Fall 25 took place in the gymnasium of a Parisian school called Lycée Carnot, whose alumni include a mighty list of French political power, including former President Jacques Chirac, half a dozen famous philosophers, and the guys from Daft Punk. The room was absolutely massive and featured a few large installations. The most noticeable was a series of large-scale collage pieces. The themes and the lore of all these collages are all over the place. For now, we'll just say that it deals a lot with the childhood of Joseph Stalin. Once everyone had taken their seats, the show began with a massive cardboard tank emerging from behind a heavy curtain. The tank was manned by Andrew Bailey, the guitarist for the rock band Dive. Andrew is performing live on cardboard synthesizers while he rides. Henry actually has a close relationship with the guys from Dive who appeared in a short film that Henry produced a few years ago. That's actually Andrew on the floor with a number of DIY synthesizers. And as those first few ensembles come out onto the runway, we can see that the primary theme we'll be working with is dictators, mostly Soviet. Henry has told us on this very channel in an interview that he is not making political statements through his work. I actually asked him about that directly and about Soviet themes specifically in an interview a year and a half ago. If we're talking about intention, I just don't think the political angle is relevant. Many of these looks ride the rail between your brain remembering a cartoon dictator and the true grit of how one might have actually dressed in the past. So the opening look is actually a great example of this. Soviet aesthetics have been a part of what new ERD looks like, but you do not have to know any of that to look at this and think Russian villain. This woman has structured shoulders on a black fur cape over what looks like a lace catsuit and a sterling silver belt with that hair and those lips. Das Vidanya, boys. Here we actually have an ensemble that features a piece that's actually called Henry's Dictator Coat. It's part of a list of Henry items the brand has recently started offering. So a lot of populist style dictators had a habit of dressing in this very simplistic but vaguely militaristic way in order to communicate strength, military, big, strong Russia, but you got to keep the people's movement look going. Mao Zedong actually did the same thing in the way that he dressed, and that's referenced in this specific look that is actually called Mao's daughter's dress. They, of course, in their ERD fashion, kind of fetishized it a little bit more. And a lot of these looks can be just boiled down to the idea of Henry and his design team building convincing characters. A great example is pretty much any look by this model specifically. He's a recurring model for the ERD brand. You may recognize him from last season. He was the inmate in the cell whose head was shaved in front of everyone before the show actually started. So that device on his nose is not a prop. This model has a deviated septum, and he needs that in order to breathe comfortably through his nose. Is this like a signature, or is it holding your nostrils open?
Yeah, because I have a deviated septum. I can't breathe for shit.
No shit. So it is actually like the thing, like the viral, breathe better thing.
Oh, I was doing it for years, and then it got viral, and I'm like, fuck.
He's an incredibly nice dude, and frankly, he looks cool as fuck with that thing on. It is one of those things where it's like a stylist couldn't replicate this. It's perfect. So this season, he's wearing this massive fur piece that I'm just going to assume is real fur. And it's very much done in this Victorian style of fur from the time when Stalin would have been a young boy. I mean, if you actually go back and look at photos from that time, historic photos, fur was not executed tastefully so that you could just enjoy the warm, breathable, soft properties of animal fur. You were basically just wearing a badly taxidermied animal. If this runway look does feel exaggerated and kind of too much for you, please remember that this is much closer to an accurate representation of the past than most versions of fur that you have seen today. He wears it over a duster that features a number of these metal plates that were retrieved from the wreckage of a Japanese plane crash, sold on eBay, and bought by the ERD team. The looks all continue until each model has walked the massive room. Then, from behind the curtain, a second tank emerges, accompanied by a group of 5 children dressed in ERD children's clothes. The tank is a symbol that's used in the ERD collage book a great deal. That collage book was the official invitation to the show. It's meant to look like a heavily used children's composition book that contains just a shit ton of original art by Henry. This thing fucking rules. I will own this until I'm dead. Personally, I think the tank is supposed to be, the formal term is art brut, just raw art. Despite Henry having a formal art education, he's very drawn to outsider art, things made by people who do not have formal training and whose work has this extra grit to it. Raw art, I actually think, is a very self-descriptive term. Here we can actually see Henry applying the writing to the tank using his non-dominant left hand. Additionally, the cardboard tank, of course, had to be prototyped and attempted a couple of times before they got it right. The first iteration was very sleek with these clean, perfect edges. So they hit it with things and just drenched it with water until it was, again, just more raw. But the level of detail for projects like this in ERD shows is just stunning. We were the only people documenting with this much care, and we got everything. Let's actually go back and talk about those massive collages that were in the room before the show started. How do we look at these? What are we supposed to do to interpret these? I mean, you can absolutely spend an enormous amount of time with Henry's collage work. It rewards close examination. Between the book and the posters and the tanks, all of his collage work jumps around a great deal, but one major theme that emerges in this collection is the theme of dictatorship and the young life of Joseph Stalin. Anything I say here ultimately is going to be insufficient for a summary. The invitation has a page that also happens to reference a teacher who permanently logs off by handcuffing themselves to a picnic table and then manages to get that picnic table into a lake. I mean, for me, as someone who is tasked with interpreting these collections of clothes, I thought that the collages and the supercut video that they post before every runway show and the stock of records and books and art at their rare and exotic bookstore in Paris and Henry's paintings and the little details from every meticulously crafted invitation that they have sent out for the runway shows, I thought that all of those things, when taken in together and studied closely, would become a guide to understanding the clothes. Like, if you could just spend enough time with these, you Google all of the little references and you catalog and you translate, and I have done all of that stuff, that you would then have a clean one-to-one mood board that would explain the clothes. And of course, it does not work like that. Going through all of this is absolutely enthralling. But then when you look at the runway show pieces themselves, you're confronted with another collage puzzle. Especially when we were able to go backstage, these details go all the way down. The amount of detailed examination from the viewer that these looks call for is massive. It's unfortunately more than we even have time for in this segment. There's even more pieces that didn't make it into the show that are each worth examining closely to fully unpack the last 6 months of the design team obsessing over everything. A quick example is this blue dress, which is one of the more literal ensembles in the show. This just has to be Stalin's mother. I mean, I don't have like a photo to be like, look, it's her in this photograph, but it's just gotta be Kiki. The general matronly look to this one, especially compared to the other women's looks, which are less matronly. I don't know, I have no formal proof, but it does fit perfectly with this historic psychoanalysis of Stalin's childhood that I found, where his mother is described as wearing a flowing blue dress with long sleeves. The look itself even features these kind of orthodox trinkets attached to the collar.
I feel very in character with the wig and the dress, especially when I walk, because it flies really nicely behind me. I feel like I should run away.
But again, that is about as literal as things are going to be in an ERD show. So if we study the collages, we study the book, we even study every album and book that's posted by Anti-Public Library, and we don't get the answers, then what is this for? I think this exists to set an emotional temperature. Daniela and I talked about emotional temperature a little bit in our last review for ERD, just to give you the quickest summary here. I can't perfectly replicate your mama's cooking, but I can learn a recipe that can get me close. Daniela actually coined this term, emotional temperature, and it's been incredibly useful for us as critics. So the book, The Invitation, this sets the emotional temperature for that show. And after the show came out, pretty much everyone on Instagram had the same initial question. Why is there a ye old WWE championship belt with Joseph Stalin on it? Let's find out why. These are personal theories, but I believe that Henry feels this scary kinship with Stalin. There's actually a little bit of crossover between their childhoods. Stalin's mother wanted him to become a priest, and so he received a pretty expensive education for the socioeconomic class that they were in, and he was ruthlessly misbehaved while at school. Eventually, Stalin was kicked out for picking a fight with a very particularly ugly priest, I'm told. Henry, you should not be surprised, had a very expensive private education, and he proceeded to get kicked out of a series of boarding schools across Europe and Canada. Apparently, the final straw for young Joseph Stalin getting kicked out was when he was getting into it with one of the priests at school, and the priest said, "Hey, do you know who you're talking to?" And Stalin said, "All I see is a mole." And that is an awesome thing for a teenage boy to do, to get kicked out of school. A little bit less awesome is when Stalin ordered the execution of 85,000 priests in a single year. And that leads us to a very unfun part of this review. There is a common theme that unites all dictators through history. It is the single most important element of their lives. That is the need for absolute control. And yeah, if I was in Stalin's position, I would probably also need that same control. I mean, he must have been thinking that, like, if I can go from gory Georgia to becoming the sole leader of the Soviet Union, there has got to be some 25-year-old shit out there that thinks that he can do the same thing. There must be thousands of people like that. I mean, has one of them worked their way into my inner circle? Is one of them in the building with me now? Is one of these fucking patrol guards the problem? Okay, stop. Remember when we were talking about emotional temperature, the recipe for a feeling? That same paranoid need for complete vice grip control exists somewhere else too. On one trip, McQueen had a paranoia panic attack. He was convinced that there were LVMH assassins on the plane, the assistant recalls. I thought he was joking, but he was not. He thought someone was going to kill him, and he ran off the plane in London. It was a bad sign, end quote. That's an excerpt from Dana Thomas's excellent book, Gods and Kings. McQueen was obsessed with loyalty and regularly accused his friends of betrayals that they were not committing. Quote, the sense of entitlement, he was not ready for it. Psychologically, he couldn't carry that weight. To be able to lead a team, you need a lot of experience dealing with people. He was too young. You need to learn leadership. It's very unfortunate what happened to him. He had the talent, the skills, but not the psychological strength. There are a lot of skills to learn, end quote. And that is via a book by one granary called This Is Not About Youth. It's a book full of industry professionals that are anonymously speaking about issues in the industry. Here it was a head of production speaking about a creative director who met a very unfortunate early end to their career. There's also this story that I was told one time by a designer at Ralph Lauren who said that he had to learn very early on that if he shows up to work and he's not wearing the brand and Ralph asks him, who makes your coat, you had better say it's him or it's vintage, because if you answer honestly and it's not Ralph, he'll start saying stuff like, hey pal, I'm a billionaire. Do you have a problem with my fucking clothes? And honestly, like, quotes and stories aside, it is common industry knowledge that creative directors often struggle with paranoia and that they are complete control freaks. It is infuriating to be the sole holder of the vision, and it is really difficult to view other people as loyal when you have to keep correcting the vision to them. That's kind of the curse of creative leadership. I mean, like, at least when you're managing a Costco, you're only dealing with the normal factors that make leadership impossible. Henry is a self-reflective person, and that self-reflection was a big part of what allowed him to get clean years ago. ERD is getting successful. They're a proper luxury fashion brand now. They have been for a while. I think Henry might be stepping back and looking at himself and asking some needed questions. The dictator approach to creative leadership is extremely common. Your fave does it too. But it's not being glorified here. Like, if we flip to the end of the book, in the little sleeve that holds the credits and special thanks, it reads in French, quote, little by little, Henry became aware of what was happening. He had the feeling of walking on ice, thin ice. By the way, the only reason that I'm showing you the book like this is because I emailed ERD asking for full resolution pictures of the book because I didn't want to tear it up trying to scan it myself. And they sent back those scans for me, but they did specify that Henry has specifically asked, please, that I show the book in my hands because the flat images from the scans kind of ruined the realistic distressing of the book. The dictator was right. That way was better. Danielle and I are extremely proud to be the only media outlet on earth with a long-form interview with Henry Alexander Levy. Henry and I sat down for a long talk about his life and his work. If you are interested in that interview, you should join the Patreon. We have that along with dozens of other interviews and exclusive videos. Go check it out. So leading up to this fashion week, we lost legendary film director and auteur David Lynch. One of the only things that everyone in fashion can agree on that is not fashion related is that almost everyone in the industry loves the movies of David Lynch. David actually passed away a little bit before men's Paris Fashion Week, and there wasn't really enough space there for any of the designers to put in a proper tribute other than like the music for the show or something. And so the lead up time to women's Paris Fashion Week was much longer, and so a lot of designers did actually design tributes to him that went into the show itself. I just want to cover all of the different tributes here in one place, so we're not like having to have a David Lynch section of like 6 or 7 different segments here. We're going to put all the tributes in one place. Starting with Junya Watanabe. They featured a lot of geometric designs in the show, and one of those was done up in a blue velvet. Acne Studios similarly had us enter into their runway space in a long corridor made of purple velvet in order to not be too on the nose. Akris made a number of items in blue velvet in keeping with their collection's tribute to the blue hour, which is the time of the night just before dark. And of course, David. Julian Klausner's premiere at Dries Van Noten ended the show's soundtrack with Roy Orbison's song In Dreams. That song was featured in blue velvet in one of the scariest scenes that I've ever seen, and it is also one of David Lynch's personal favorite songs of all time. Enfants, Déprimés closed their show's soundtrack with a different Orbison song about dying that was called Life Fades Away. They also ended the show with a look done up in all red velvet, just like the curtains that David spent his life paying tribute to and absolutely refusing to explain. Shout out David Lynch, one of the best to ever do it. Rip in peace, King. On this channel, Danielle and I have garnered a little bit of a reputation for illuminating Demna's work at Balenciaga. The Balenciaga segment from our last Women's Week video is the longest single segment that we've ever had in any Paris Fashion Week mega video. The videos that we've made about Balenciaga are some of the work that we're the most proud of, and one of our best performing videos of all time is not in its title, but it's ultimately about Demna. We usually do that by identifying the just hurricane of references in a Balenciaga show and then tying that into some of the larger questions that Demna is asking in his career overall, or maybe just in that show. And we're going to do that here as well, but this is overall going to be quite a different analysis. This show is quite different than Demna's normal output. And in its difference, it ends up being the same. The fashion industry's news cycle recently told us that Demna will be moving to Gucci, another label under the Kering umbrella. Less official, but via sources on the inside, we know that Demna is doing this voluntarily, first of all, which is quite important. He was not forced to move to Gucci. He has requested to move over to Gucci. And apparently the look at Gucci is going to be totally different. Danielle and I are actually really excited to see this. On the ground, the set for the new show was a black velvet maze that models walked through. Nothing exceptional. Apparently this decision was made because Demna wanted you to focus more on the clothes and because people had complained last season that the giant table didn't feel very inclusive. The maze felt ultra disconcerting. You couldn't really get lost in it, but we've all been turned around in a hedge maze before, and this definitely brought up those same feelings of, oh shit, am I going to be here the rest of the night? It especially felt like that at the end. Additionally, when velvet is lining the walls of an area, it deafens the sound in this really strange way, such that you once you had taken your seat, you didn't feel like you were in an audience of 1,000 people anymore. You felt very segmented with your little group. The runway show introduced a concept called the standard fit, which very well could be a play on the name of a gym chain in France called Basic Fit, which is hilarious, and 1,000 jokes have been made about this amongst fashion people. So standard fit is a double entendre. It means two different things in terms of fashion. The first one is standard sizing. When people go into a private Discord server or a Facebook group and talk about things like, oh, I'm 5'10" and this dress fits me perfectly, or hey, do these sneakers run true to size? Those are conversations about a standard size. They're trying to establish similar frames of reference to make a guess about the sizing for a particular garment or accessory. The other side of the double entendre is standard issue. That's just the default. If you work at this restaurant, you wear this uniform. When you join basic training in the US military, you're given combat boots like it's always been, but now they give you a pair of trainers as well. And you don't get to just show up and say, oh, I brought my Sambas. They have a standard issue pair and you are wearing those. So it's kind of like standard fit does refer to the actual measurements of the clothing, but it also importantly refers to the default, the standard outfit. And that's where things get a little bit interesting here. Balenciaga has always played with regular real-life stuff. That's what makes their unsettling work even more unsettling. It's that so many of these bizarre, sort of frightening elements are shockingly commonplace in modern life. So in this show, we're actually getting into this mode of depicting real life that Demna hasn't actually gone into before in the past. Look 1 is so standard that I don't think I've ever actually even seen it in real life before. Like in all my years of people wearing suits in front of me, I've not really seen someone organically out in the wild dressed like this. Every garment in this look, when taken individually, does answer the question, what is the most standard for a tie? Black tie. What is the most standard button-up shirt? Just a white shirt, white shirt. Every choice is individually made by resorting to its default. And again, I've never seen someone just say like, hello, friends, I have shown up to this nice event and I am wearing this. But I mean, like, based on it being so default and so standard, I should be seeing this all the time, right? This guy should be everywhere, but I'm not sure I've ever seen him. No one dresses like this. Not even people who are themselves trying to opt out of wardrobe decisions. So the opening set of looks kind of swirl around this same idea. We actually found out recently that Demna went to go get a bespoke suit made in Paris. He like showed up for the fittings, like you do multiple fittings. They like make a toile over you and stuff. They finish the whole thing out. It's super expensive and very time consuming. And when he finished, he said he hated it. It was uncomfortable. He said it didn't fit him very well. And like he didn't have enough like range of mobility and stuff. And so he tried to meaningfully improve upon the French bespoke suit, which you can tell that it's a French suit because of the shoulders. Those really like stiff shoulders are the big giveaway. Fun anecdote, he actually got the bespoke suit made for a Halloween party, which is hilarious. Comfort at Balenciaga is very often felt on the inside. Like, for example, all the Puma collaboration pieces are in that tracksuit fabric on the outside, but they're fully lined on the inside with terry cloth. I think these suits were made to be comfortable. It's not slim fit by any means, but it's not the hallmark Balenciaga super oversized fit that we've all gotten so used to. Personally, I think that this is in part because we understand that Demna was used as a fit model for some of the collection, like he himself was the fit model for the clothes. He wanted to really make sure that the comfort and the fit and the proportions were really dialed in. But I do think that the oversized legacy of Balenciaga is being skipped over a little bit this season because of how commonplace Ozempic has gotten in the industry overall. And if there was any confusion at all, like, oh no, they have all this like free time or everyone has access to luxury gyms or something. It's not. It's just everybody in the industry is on Ozempic, like everybody. The permanent wrinkles are, I think, the Balenciaga take on the cheap fast fashion suits that promise to be wrinkle free and super easy to take care of. When really, truly, the easiest suit to take care of is the one that eliminates all assumptions that you might show up in a non-wrinkled suit by always being wrinkled no matter what. Does that make sense? And there's even more like default characters of real life scattered throughout the show. Like for any Americans here that haven't been to France, this guy is all over Paris. Like if you just like pop out of a random door in the middle of Paris, you'll see like 2 of these guys walking around on the street. For any Europeans that have not been to America, if you go out to the suburbs of my fine country, this is what our teenage boys look like. All of them. This guy knows more information about Mr. Beast than you thought there was information to know. Boom! Every teenage boy is quaking. Annihilation. Default people kind of leads us to the thought of NPCs, non-player characters. These are all of the characters in a video game that just kind of make up the background. They're unimportant to the game. They're unimportant to the player. That's why the music for this runway show, which is always done by Demna's partner, Boyfriend, was composed primarily of 8-bit sounds. If you try to talk to NPCs, they just say generic, uninteresting stuff. People will often call other people NPCs when they want to say that they're like normie and have no personality. So it's a little bit of a joke when some of the most default looking clothes in this collection end up being the ones with graphics on them that say main character. And despite this guy being an NPC, his shirt is super interesting because it's a button-down shirt with jersey cuffs, which is actually a very interesting shirt. A few of these looks are pretty funny because they remind me of when you're trying to customize your character and you can unlock or pay for digital clothing items, notably like this guy with the motorcycle helmet and driving loafers, which like drivers which are built to drive in a car, to like switch between the pedals and stuff. No one has ever worn those on a motorcycle. I think it would be dangerous to wear them on a motorcycle. I don't think they were considering a motorbike when calling them driving loafers. It's yet again this idea of like opting out of a wardrobe. You also have default being played with in some sneakier ways, like the red roses we were sent as invitations were reflected in the show by a model, and then it hit me all at once. It's The Bachelor, the most default show of all time. Like, who is gonna get the magic rose by pretending to love this NPC-ass looking man? There's also subversions of the standard with little details like a wedding ring being worn on the right hand by many models. This was a way for same-sex couples to showcase their commitment to each other in a world that still in many countries forbids gay marriage. A few Cristobal references found their way into the collection as well. We had some tees that were seen in their normal, uncut state only to be shown later with the sleeves cut off. It's a very like dude bro move, but one of the pieces of Cristobal lore that we have is that he was obsessive about the sleeves on his dresses. And we know that Cristobal would get so upset with their appearance sometimes that he was known to rip them out in frustration. Another subtle Cristobal reference is in these hoods, which are a reference to the Shoe Noir evening look, but they also hold a more contemporary significance. The iconic baby fat fur puffer is an unforgettable jacket from the early 2000s. We know that Demna has referenced this before. In this famous picture of Killa Cam wearing an all pink baby fat fur hood, that was a previous source of inspiration for him at Vêtements, the show they did at the Museum of Natural History. Notable amongst all the hooded looks was this one, the one that says luxury on it. It looks poorly made, like with bad stitching details and like the warped zipper, and it was designed that way on purpose. I'm not sure if you've ever had to try to make something that is super well made look like it's not super well made, but it's a bit. This is a fully cashmere jacket. There's also British tropes, Chelsea football logo, and a lot of footballer clothes, and a few looks that seem to have concealer lips. Other looks were meant to be emblematic of a party wardrobe decision, throwing on a long button-down shirt with a belt to make it a mini dress to go out in. A puffer gets the same treatment, and some makeup in the show featured glued-down eyebrows with new hand-drawn eyebrows, which is a staple of drag makeup for an evening show, or this look where they're missing one eyelash. The best looking party dress is the knit, cinched together at the waist with a giant safety pin. While Demna pursued this idea of standard fit, we got to learn a lesson about standards. They really don't exist, or at least they're always different and changing. Even when you try to create the most standardized things possible, your own voice ends up coming out. Demna's fingerprints are all over these clothes. Even this look where it's supposed to be ultra standard. A guy rolled out of bed and put on the same thing that he wears every day. Jeans, sneakers, t-shirt, but it was cold today, so he put on the warmest coat that he owns. That is the most tale as old as time for men right now in the world. Like, that is the standardized concept. But even here, Demna couldn't resist fusing a hoodie with a top coat. It's a floor-length hoodie gown. This is a bathrobe made entirely out of suede. An attempt to standardize will always be more of a reflection of yourself than any true objective standard. I think that's the problem with assumptions that we make about other people too, like the NPCs out in the world. It's an old story at this point, but I really love that Demna and Loic went on vacation together and then got turned away from a fancy restaurant because of how they were dressed. They used that opportunity to go shopping for normie clothes and then were eventually led into the restaurant after changing. I think that experience taught Demna a lesson in how to appreciate other people's clothes. I think that there was kind of a joke in there at first where it's like, look, I'm Demna Vasalia and this is my partner and we're like dressed in Lacoste now. But like, I don't know, maybe he thought about it a little bit. Importantly, this is not his final Balenciaga show. Demna restarted the couture program for the Maison, and he will be presenting his 5th and final haute couture collection this summer. You should be unbelievably excited for this. For us, like Daniela and me, that couture show can't come soon enough. He has done such an excellent job with that couture program, and I have a feeling that he is going to go out with a bang.
What does one actually say before a Yohji Yamamoto show? I don't have a good answer for that. I'm still very much in a place where I'm looking forward to grasping what's going on here. At this point, his career is so massive, and a lot of the ways of reading his work are so opaque that I probably won't feel confident about talking about this for another decade and a half. But boy, am I excited to talk about it. Some of the best insights that I've gotten about Yohji's work have literally come from our own comments section. So if anyone here feels like they're like not qualified to speak about it or whatever, I'd encourage you to give it a shot. The sun is setting. Let's go inside.
I keep having to learn this lesson over and over again. It's crazy to me how much of a difference there is between Yohji's work when it's taken in very quickly as a whole. A lot of it just ends up looking the same. But then when you take any amount of time to examine it closely, like look by look in each collection, there is a huge amount of variety in that man's work. Every time I try to generalize for something where it's like, oh, it's mostly black. Oh, literally, you try to look for evidence of it, you can't find it. It's crazy. This season, there were a ton of new motifs. Yohji had an electricity theme that could be seen through the wires that tangled themselves through a few looks and seemed to kind of be the main inspiration for the hair of many of the models who looked like victims of a little static electricity. The models all wore flat shoes, many of which featured a strip of leather that flapped back and forth, adding even more to kind of this elegant derelictness. And speaking of leather, leather is back in the clothes too. We've been in a heavy wool period for Yohji lately. Some of the leather pieces are sharp and multi-paneled in a classic Yamamoto pattern maze, but I was really taken with the leather that was given this wash that makes it appear worn out, kind of stretched and shapeless. Of course, that's done in such a way that the outfit would feel incomplete without that sagging leather element. There's also this consistent use of these turtlenecks made from like just baby's breath weight of wool that creates this beautiful transparency for the wearer's nose and mouth. And I realize it's very subtle, but this is the kind of idea that we come to Yohji for. It's something elegant, maybe a little bit bitchy, and it's just something that wouldn't work in nearly any other context. We actually started seeing a common theme start to emerge this season at the end of Yohji's shows. Instead of a flood, when all the models come out together, much closer together to give you a second look at all the clothes, so instead of a flood, there's this separate show within the show. This season, that came in the form of 8 models emerging at the end of the show in 2 bright purple dresses and 6 reversible bright purple coats. The models demonstrated the reversibility of the coats live as they helped each other out and back into their respective coats. So Yohji using a sharp flash of color at the end of a otherwise pretty monochrome runway show is actually not a new thing. He did the same move last season, only this time it was using the color red. We briefly spoke with Yamamoto-san to get a few words after the show, and he mentioned that purple is the color of royalty. I don't think we should read too much into that. I just took that to mean it's a color, man. I like it and I wanted to use it, so here it is. This closing segment stood out to me in particular because it reminded me of vintage runway shows from the 80s when the general mood seemed more relaxed. The modern model is stone-faced, slamming their feet with every step normally, but Yohji shows, by contrast, feel a lot more playful. I would call this charming. There's a Yohji quote captured by Suzy Minquez in 1989, long time ago, for the International Herald Tribune. Yohji says, quote, "When you remember the time of Art Nouveau, La Belle Époque, you can find so many kinds of useless beauty, nonsense beauty. But sometimes in your life, you have to understand that kind of beauty because if you follow just simple convenience to live, you lose something. So I wanted to say, let's have some nonsense, useless spirit on the clothes. Let's play," end quote. I think that still rings true today with this collection, 25 years later. 35. I did the math wrong. It's 35 years later. Holy shit. It's a mode of magnetism that feels so dated and old-fashioned, like this, like, oh, smile, be charming. In order for us to experience that unironically, I think we needed it delivered through the conduit of Yamamoto-san. These shows are the most solemn affairs in Paris Fashion Week. And to give you an idea of that, there were about 1,000 people in this room. And then 5 minutes before the show started, everyone was quiet. This is the actual audio. No one told us to be quiet. Just the entire group just decided, we're all seated. Let's take the volume way down. Nowhere else in Paris or in just society have I seen that happen. It was crazy. The level of respect and occasion that everyone has going into Yamamoto shows is very high. And that's a situation where someone can say, and it be effective to say, let's play a little. And, sometimes things are purple just because purple is nice to look at. We are big Akris fans on this channel, and one of the reasons it's been so easy for us to become such fans of this house is because of these conversations that we get to have with Albert, the creative director. We were lucky enough to get a full preview of this collection.
Yeah, this is day 4 of Fashion Week, or possibly day 5. We're going to Akris to what's called a pre-see. And that's where you're able to look at the collection before you actually see it on the runway. And for Akris, this is super important because they develop most of their textiles in-house or with local mills. And those textiles are just so advanced that I sort of consider these visits with Akris to be my continuing education in fashion, where I'm able to train my hand a little bit with the best cashmere, these really innovative things in silk. Then I'm able to take that information out and use that in the rest of my job. But yeah, let's see what they got this season.
Yeah, I mean, you see, it's all about blue. It's something I wanted to do for long because getting into that blue sensation, you know, I was also thinking of that blue hour, which I love. This is really a double face coat. You turn around and you get a black coat.
And to me, tell us a little bit about what's necessary to make something double-faced so that it's reversible, because that requires its own special type of material. You can't just have anything be double-faced.
Yeah, double face is a workmanship. You know, it's this fabric which I get from these few weavers from Biella in that surrounding of Piacenza, or Piacenza himself, who has the knowledge to weave that black plain to the plaid plain. And we open then this fabric with a machine, and then one seam is done by machine and the other seam is done by hand. So that's the great thing, that you don't have hem lines, you don't have lining, you wear the fabric on say. And this gives you the opportunity also to turn it around, and then, you know, here I have the ticket pocket and on the other side I have the parka pocket, because it's the same pocket from both sides, and so you enter from this. And then in the collars also I need to care, because I need to do a collar who is turning right. This is a denim blue leather jacket with all the quality you always get here. I don't change, I always go to the same supplier, but it's a cute little uniform inspired jacket.
I would love to hear about this one that has a little bit of a fur trim.
It's the top of a double coat, you will see. Underneath is a coated waistcoat, and it's a coat you can wear together, and then you just have your shearling on.
Okay. The leather on the inside of the cuff is a really nice touch.
And then we were speaking about silks. This is another fantastic pure silk satin duchesse.
Yeah.
From the same supplier, like the
Duchesse satin. Yeah. I've always told people I feel Duchesse satin so rarely, because obviously it's quite rare. I almost say it's like when butter is fully solidified. That is what Duchesse satin feels like.
Then here we have 3 different corduroys mixed. And
now, how do you prefer to make corduroys? Are these cotton corduroy?
Yes.
Okay. Why is cotton selected for corduroy so much? Because if you went to Levi's and bought a €60 pair of corduroy pants, it would be cotton, and here it's cotton as well at the very top of the quality chain. Why is cotton so necessary for corduroy?
I would say it's just not a corduroy if it's not cotton.
Okay,
you know?
it's part of the history of the textile.
It's velvet based or so, but there is always an evolution for cord development, which I show you, you know. Here I did probably the most innovative maxi cord ever.
Yeah.
This is done out of wool on organza.
Very good.
You know, this is a type of, in that whole shearling thinking, I was playing around and said, okay, I want something voluminous but still not too heavy.
Yeah.
So, and then we turned out, also here, this denim color turned out to be fabulous.
And the pile is like half an inch tall.
Yeah.
It's wonderful. That feels great too.
And then, you know, underneath I combined this with an extra light feather stretch tulle. Feather fur stretch tulle, and this is so cute, 2-piece. You know, everyone can get this in the wardrobe, and she's newly dressed. This is cashmere gold, and then, but it reverses to a full raincoat.
Wow.
You know.
Oh, to a raincoat.
Yeah.
Wow.
No, that's the same silk I showed you.
Yeah.
And with this, you just turn it around, and you can get into the rain.
That is beautiful, Albert.
Yeah, I mean, this is probably the message of this, my message of the season, And then,
of that, like the decision of the blue hour, and you can go one way or the other.
Yeah, it's the day here, and then you turn it
into night. Yeah. Cool. Now, do you know the first time that I started saying we need to start going to Akris was when, because I have a friend in Atlanta that you know, and we were talking.
Joy.
Yeah. But I went in to talk to him, and he said, "Oh, you really like textiles, right?" And I was like, "Yeah, I love textiles." And he was like, "Come into our changing room." And the walls for the Atlanta store it's all horsehair. It's undyed horsehair. And he was like, "Touch this. You've never felt just like solid horsehair all the way through."
True.
And it's crazy. That's really the reason why we're so interested in what you all do, is because you take textiles quite seriously, and you have enough knowledge so that you're not just taking their word for it. You can negotiate back and forth, and you don't have to compromise. You really get what you want and what fits the collection.
You know, it's tricky to develop fabrics, but I mean, I definitely get the best partners to work with me, and then if you get concentrated, you really turn out also new fabric. And this is what we need from time to time when silhouettes are changing. It's both ways, you know. I keep going like Adolf Loos, who said, if a material is really fabulous and still looks modern, you should keep going.
Of course.
And you know, there's too many people who just stress for the next new, only to be new. It's different. So in plain materials, you go and revisit, or you just go on, like these silks here, which made me a phenomenal new approach. You need to see that one also.
Okay.
That's the duo trench. You know,
gracious.
This is amazing, oder? You know, we have a trench which you can close, or you can wear it just as a waistcoat.
That is so beautiful.
And this again out of that silk.
Now is this obviously a classic trench would be down past your knees?
For sure.
Is this shape just something where you said it'll be interesting if it's in this shape, or is there a tradition for this shape of trench also?
This is a free interpretation. Trench can be. It's the trench details on the top which make it a trench, oder?
Well, it's a great candidate for being played with.
Look, it just arrived.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
The most striking coat. You know, this is my fabric shearling coat. You know?
Yeah, it's beautiful. And you had one other dress you wanted to share with us. I think that they were putting up this one. Yes?
Yeah, that's the nylon yarn we did. You know, we have done out of a tulle fabric, we did yarn. And then it was hand knitted.
And these are tubes.
Tubes, yeah. I needed to do tubes. I had that yarn, you know, where you see. And then I just said, do tubes that we can knit it.
Albert, this is beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for coming.
Of course, yeah.
We then proceeded to the show, which was held in the same location as their previously ultra-light and airy spring collection, except the windows were fully blacked out to enhance the moody blue lighting. What I admire about Akris is that they don't really have an influencer strategy. They try and dress women with purpose for their shows. Athletes, philanthropists, experts, all these women deserve to look beautiful and feel comfortable while achieving their life's purpose. And Akris wants to be the go-to brand for women with their thoughtful and elite clothing and accessories. I want to be ultra clear about something. This was the 5th runway show by mainline Comme des Garçons that Daniela and I have seen in person, and this was by far the best one. The designs themselves, the atmosphere, everything about this show was exactly what I longed to see from Kawakubo-san, the Great and Powerful. The soundtrack by Ugo Nardini contains a bone-chilling track by Bulgarian voices Angelit called Heritage. Traditional folk music from the Balkans and Eastern Europe gives the human voice this weapon-like quality because the texture of the sounds they're creating is something that your ears aren't used to hearing. It gives their voices this surprising intensity that you might also find in some American shape note singing or like the screamo genre. The collection consisted of 20 looks total, and these were the most crystallized, clear representation of this era of Rei Kawakubo's oeuvre. In honor of how good it was, we are going to do this segment very differently. I feel like a lot of people's experience with Comme des Garçons is seeing these insane, beautiful, crazy runway looks and then seeing the play line. These are, of course, the line of very commercial products that prop up the entire Comme des Garçons universe. So I kind of want to shake up and complicate those preconceived notions that you might have by showing you in detail what it looks like to turn these unbelievably beautiful runway pieces into sellable, buyable product that you can find at Dover Street Market locations and Comme des Garçons boutiques all over the world. I feel like Adrian Joff would really like this review. Like, he's just walking around having a normal day, and then Bliss wants to talk about the intersection of art and commerce at Comme des Garçons, and he's like, oh my gosh, my day is so much better. I should start this by reminding everyone that the runway pieces do sell to enthusiastic buyers who wear them. The runway pieces were absolutely designed on purpose to be clothes worn by people. And if that seems odd to you, you can look at our 45-minute video where we talk about Comme des Garçons and their design process and how these things actually come to be and what their purpose are. But not right now. Right now, you stay here. One of the most exciting jobs in fashion is taking those incredible runway pieces and figuring out how to convert them into product that is easier to replicate by the Comme manufacturers. We've never looked at this product with Comme before, and I am thrilled to say it is awesome to behold. Again, the pure runway looks will get real-world use on the big-ticket clients and collectors, but you can see here that many of these product pieces really effectively capture the spirit of their runway equivalents. There are unfortunately a lot of brands out there whose product developers really butcher their runway ideas. Like, they'll take an awesome runway look and remove everything special until it's just another jacket at the mall. But the Comme team keeps the art intact. All these feel like they pay adequate tribute to the pieces that they're based on. Let's just take this product, for example. It's based on this runway look, but I mean, the actual product itself is just outstanding. I mean, you all know me. I am a sucker for materials. This is not just made of whatever they had lying around. It is made with the same level of care that you would see in a standard blazer at a luxury store. It's just that the cut is unlike anything you have seen or experienced. Comme is not for everybody, and rest assured, this is not an advertisement for Comme des Garçons. But if you are one of those people that loves fashion and you're really into this stuff, but you look at all the luxury brands and you just can't find anything that feels like you, I encourage you to go to a Comme des Garçons boutique or to a Dover Street Market when they're not too busy and leave a lot of time to try on clothes. The way that Comme des Garçons people come into these clothes is always a source of fascination to me. I recently met a woman who became obsessed with Comme while she was pregnant with her first child. The clothes looked incredible on her when her body was changing, and she's been a loyal customer ever since. I want to also take a moment especially to emphasize that they're releasing some original designs from this season that to me seem like tasteful, simple reinterpretations of one of the more famous ensembles from the spring 1997 show Body Meets Dress, Dress Meets Body. There are probably a few thousand people the world over who would love to buy and wear that collection, but it is insanely expensive now. The pieces are quite old, they're very fragile, etc. I didn't try these on myself, but they seemed like a wearable, unfussy way to live your dream if your dream is to wear the OGs. It's not an official reissue. They will not be advertising them as a reissue, but I thought that information might be relevant to some Comme obsessives out there. Here is something that I don't get to say every single review. Marie Adam-Leenaerdt has arrived. This was her 5th show, and up until now, we all saw glimpses of what Marie's vision was, but I've always stuck by my theory. A designer needs 4 shows to hit their stride, and Marie Adam-Leenaerdt showed up this season. As a Balenciaga alumnus, Marie showcased the quietly disturbing parts of her work in the past, blended with her 80s power dressing look that fits so well under Demna's Balenciaga. But on her own, Marie has honed in on making traditional clothes with unsettling proportions. That's what we're going to talk about today. One big element that makes Adam-Leenaerdt's designs unique is her focus on the arms. Most designers are really focused on the shoulder especially, or maybe like the height of the armhole, but Marie Adam-Leenaerdt is focused on the whole damn thing. I love this stiff, boxy drop shoulder sleeve that she does. She's moving the stiffness of a padded shoulder down the whole arm. I love how subtly creepy this looks. I do see a lot of Margiela references in this show. They feature jackets with no lapels and a Vereuse V-neck cut in other looks that resemble Martin's work at Hermès. But Adam-Leenaerdt's approach to these references is adopting their minimalistic and pared-down sophistication to contrast it with her disconcerting boxy tube arms and equally boxy tube skirts. It works exceptionally well when Marie is using what appears to be a double-face wool and subtle hints about the construction of the clothes on the outside. And boxy gets even boxier for Marie with these looks that are just walking decorated gift boxes. We're taking the idea all the way. I think that's a good instinct. My favorite unique idea of Marie's in this show is a clever reimagining of a bubble skirt, except it's not really a bubble skirt. And what I find is her brightest moment yet, Adam-Leenaerdt incorporates the strange and till now overlooked movement of the corners of fitted sheets. I don't know any other fashion designers that have done this. I've seen tons of references to bed sheets, but this is really clever. It's executed beautifully in the skirts. Another overlooked bedsheet reference are the little corner ties inside the duvet that come spilling out of the sleeves. Some are tied in bows, some are left loose. She even places one on the dead center of the neckline. It's objectively pretty cute, but also has that disconcerting feel like, why is it there of all places? Very effective and subtle. Marie seems to include a lot of older models. She wants to communicate that she makes work that is appropriate for women of all ages, that it can look natural at any time. It's a great idea since, despite fashion's overall fixation with youth, the bulk of the market tends to skew older. So instead of trying to sell that demographic like the illusion of being younger, Marie is easily going to convince any woman that sticks with her work that they can feel comfortable wearing it now and in 10 years. Your younger style and older style truly can blend together seamlessly in Marie Adam-Leenaerdt's world. No need for a big wardrobe overhaul in your midlife. Cool clothes can be difficult to quantify because, like, what's considered cool is usually pretty generational. But Marie is banking on the idea that her quietly unsettling look will always be effective in making people take another look at how her customers are dressed. She has a great concept here that seems to promise a lot of longevity. I honestly can't wait to see where she's headed next. This was her best season. Marie Adam-Leenaerdt has arrived. There are some themes and starting points in fashion that have been done 1,000 times. It doesn't mean that they're bad, but it means that when a designer decides to tread that path now, they must find themselves in a long tradition. Like in music, this would be the equivalent of writing about heartbreak. It would be like making a movie about the hero's journey. In fashion, it would be making a collection about rebirth or modern elegance. For this Dries Van Noten collection, Julian Klausner, the newly minted creative director, the first new creative director of the house, selects a classic starting point for the collection: children in a costume box. How does Klausner find himself in this classic fashion mode? First, through the location of the Palais Garnier, the Paris Opera House, possibly the most dripped out building in France. This place is one of the most referenced examples of the famous Napoleon III style. Everything about the Palais Garnier is wildly elaborate and ridiculously decadent. From the Palais's completion in 1875 to the present day, like as a location, it has hosted millions of people who have worn what is probably the opposite of children rummaging around in a costume box. I mean, the real opposite of children running around in a costume box is like suburban athletic wear, but hopefully you understand what I mean. I can't speak for the creators of the Palais Garnier, but one would hope that if you are creating such a soaringly beautiful place, that you would want it to be occupied by people who get to wear things there that they would never get to wear otherwise. And I think that's a little bit of what Julian was trying to do with this collection. Like, it's not just kids rummaging through the chest in grandma's attic. It's kids playing in the biggest, grandest costume chest in the biggest, grandest opera in the world. So we start the show with some very simple elaborations on the concept. This woman's hair is tied down and they just stuck some fishnet stockings up over it. Instantly, we are in a childlike mode of operation. And the show did have some big highlights for me personally. I love the cornerstone accessory, this like insane leather belt. I also love the fabric and all the shimmering details on this suit in particular. In fact, the biggest way that Klausner communicates the opulence of this concept is through the most tried and true Dries Van Noten theme: combining too many prints. This honestly is what I associate most with Dries. Many of the ensembles appear to be like 25% too many ideas on them. They're like someone crashed out in like Howell's bedroom. It's like you closed your eyes and just blindly grabbed 5 garments from this guy's wardrobe. Do you guys know about Dries Van Noten? Hits hookah. So it feels too chaotic, and you think that it's too crazy, it's too chaotic, and then you actually look at the ensembles and you find that they're all very considered, and almost like by magic, they're very balanced. Since this is the first collection by Julian Klausner at Dries Van Noten, I want to take a second here to talk about where the brand has been and where it could possibly go. Because of this eccentric but balanced but bombastic tone of Dries Van Noten, you would think that the whole brand would just be that. It's so wildly eccentric, but so tastefully balanced, but so boisterously loud. But that is an oversimplification of what Dries is. I mean, if Dries had been a painter, that really could have been his whole thing. An artist like Jean Dubuffet is able to create paintings that seem too busy. There's too many elements and color. This is too much. Surely this isn't going to work. And then just through magic, it does work. And it's visually not just balanced, it looks incredible. But fashion can't work like that because fashion introduces a very messy element. Regular people. I mean, you can be a designer that just makes these screamingly loud clothes and then find this perfectly tasteful way to balance them on a runway. But when it comes to a person who loves your vision, going to your store and picking something out, they're always going to mess it up. They do not have the artist's perfect intuition. So the real magic of Dries has always been how to transfer these gorgeous runway ensembles into products that are opulent, but it's products that teach the wearer how to use them. Many of the best designs by Dries are in some way instructional. And I'm not making any predictions here. Y'all know that my predictions are useless anyway. But I think that relationship between the designer and the audience is a big part of what makes Dries, like the man, Dries Van Noten. I think that's a big part of what makes his work so special. I am looking forward to seeing more of how Julian differentiates himself from his mentor. I suspect that designer-audience relationship will be a big part of it. I'm also looking forward to how that severance will be made on the runway as well. So for now, let's sit back, wait for show number 2 so that we can see another corner of the dress-up chest. I'm really looking forward to it. While visiting the LVMH Prize showroom, we saw a lot of talent, but we had to stop by and talk to Cynthia Merhej about her modern feminine clothing and shoes. Cynthia is unbelievably talented, and we actually have a full interview with her up now on the Patreon. We actually have more bonus content on the Patreon than you could watch if you started at midnight and watched straight through until the next midnight. We have more than 24 hours worth of bonus content. You should go to the Patreon right now and sign up. Do it.
So I think a lot of folks that are watching this segment aren't going to be super aware of what it is that you do, kind of overall for the brand, not necessarily this collection, but for the brand overall. What would you say Renaissance is about?
Now that I'm talking to you, I'm going to restart again because I'm talking to him and I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I watched the videos and now I'm talking to you guys.
Would it be better if I was like behind a phone?
No, stay. Yeah, so I'm a 3rd generation female designer. My mom is a designer. My great grandmother is a designer. So there's this very strong heritage of craftsmanship, as well as a very pragmatic view to design that I've inherited from this female perspective. But me personally, I have a very poetic, narrative, storytelling, like universe building point of view. The brand is really about the intersection of both those things. So it's really about this idea of bringing out the parts of ourselves, shouldn't hide the parts of ourselves and should bring them out and embrace that to become whole. There's really this idea of duality that I think defines kind of every story that I've done for the brand. So we played a lot with the constructions of buttons. So you can go from depending on where you place the button on a shirt, you can either decide to conceal, or you can decide to reveal. Here we have like final boss of buttons. So
covered buttons are a very underutilized thing in fashion right now. It's really cool.
And I love them.
Yeah. And I imagine that covered button, you could just cover it by hand, which normally would be impossible.
I mean, we really had to do a lot of tests to get it to really look like button. I'm not going to reveal the secret of how we did the button, but it took a while to get it. I also played a lot with fabrications that are usually hidden, like lining. And I try to really give them this like kind of nobility and treat them as if it's the same way I would treat a tailored jacket. So like the things that are usually hidden, bring them out to the forefront. It's like in this jacket where you see it's like literally as if the jacket has been cut off and you can see what's underneath. Or like this jacket that has been totally constructed out of lining. And lining is actually not an easy fabric to work with. It's incredibly fragile because it's not meant to be worn on the outside. Yeah, we also did some straight up like party looks. So I reworked some of my signature silhouettes. Like this dress, it's a silhouette that I've been working on since 2018. Another thing that I do a lot is I'm a very kind of like an experimental designer in the sense I don't believe every season you have to create something new and new and new. It's more about like tweaking over time. And every season I'm like tweaking, you know, until I really feel like, okay, this idea now I think I've like done.
Yeah, and that's one that you've iterated on a whole bunch, this kind of like ghostly top layer thing, which is really beautiful. So what, you're third generation, so that means mom and mom's mom.
So it was actually, we skipped a generation because mom's mom was like, I don't want to see an atelier. And then my mother actually picked it up very naturally. She was the youngest of 9 kids. And then I also tried new styles introduced for this season. So I'm really kind of slowly expanding the accessories collection. Me personally, I'm obsessed with shoes, and I can never find shoes I like. But yeah.
Why do you not like most shoes?
Because a lot of them are just look the same. You're like, who's making a shoe that's not a fucking loafer or ballerina flat, you know? Like,
knee-high riding boots.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the shoes I do like, unfortunately, are very expensive. So, yeah.
I can relate to that problem.
If I like a shoe, and usually I'd be like, finally, I found a shoe I love. And then
they're
I'm
like $2,000.
Yeah, exactly.
This is so fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Nice to meet you. Thank
My hair is still very wet, so that's mega professional. Driving over to Junya Watanabe, which in the entirety of Fashion Week is actually the earliest show that starts the entire week. It's a 9:30 a.m. show, so you'd think a lot of people would skip it, but also everyone is so obsessed with Junya and Comme and Noirquet and all the others that they somehow manage to be there on time. Though I would say everyone might be dressing down just a little bit because they're rushing out the door. As with all of his women's shows, it'll be interesting to see if we go into the continuing lineage of like, this is the Junya women's look and we're going to do another variation on that look, or if he has one of his one-off ideas that's super geometric and crazy. It's kind of crazy that I do not know the answer to that right now, but when you're watching this, like, I will know the answer then, and then you're just like 30 seconds away from beginning to know. Wow, the magic of movies.
And I guess I do here now in the future, but your past, know the answer to that question. But like with a lot of designers that we cover on this channel, we can never go fully inside the mystery. All we can do from here is just kind of take notes on the mystery and sort of appreciate its texture. This Junya Women's Show continues in his lineage of women's shows that are about math. And I am just going to warn you up front, you have to really hang with me here or this is not going to make any sense at all, and it is worth understanding. The show notes for Junya Watanabe are always brief. This time they read as follows, quote, I'm fascinated by creating clothing that appears to be unrealistic. This time I created everyday clothing from a cubist perspective. Everyday clothing indeed. The most notable items in this collection are variations on biker jackets, which is the most consistent garment type in Junya's body of work. He loves biker jackets. Some of these riders are actually made using torn up Doc Marten boots. My thoughts exactly. But wait, hang on. First, we need to actually get a lay of the land here because it'll be really easy to get turned around if we don't know exactly what we're talking about. The shapes in this show are, in fact, very big and do appear impossible at first glance. There's a lot of variety, but everything does have this massive geometric thing going on, right? Even when we switch materials, it's all very geometry. But let me ask you, what does it specifically mean when Junya says that this is referencing cubism? Like, I know a lot of the art school kids are sitting there like screaming at their phone like, oh, it's about perspective, it's about perspective. Have you ever actually walked out in detail, step by step, what that actually means? Indulge me for just a moment. This painting fucked up the art world in a massive way. It is a 2-dimensional object. It's a flat painting, of course, trying to represent a 3-dimensional object, which is a room full of naked ladies. But why do these naked ladies all look so busted? That is because Picasso and really all the cubists generally were trying to solve a problem. When you're looking at a 3-dimensional object, you're never looking at all of it. I gotta go get something. In real life, we can turn things around, or if it's a big object, we can kind of walk around it or whatever. But when it's a painting, it's just flat permanently. Like, we might know that there is a big mark on the back of the book, but if I turn it around and paint it on this end, maybe you remember that, but it's not being shown. Not sponsored. This is just referenced later in this. It was a prop that we had here anyway. This is a great book, though. So in order to show the mark on the back of the book and show the front of the book, which is the relevant part where you could recognize the title of the book, you need to force perspective onto the viewer. You can tell that cubists are doing this just by looking for lines. These lines delineate areas where the source of the light and the perspective is different than the other areas of the painting, right? Because like as I move around the book, my perspective on it changes, but the light source remains the same. And so by having a dark part over here being shown to you on a flat surface over here like this, but it's like dark, but you know what I'm talking about. Okay, so one might think that when Junya says that this collection is cubist, that it would mean that he's creating clothing with pattern cutting that creates multiple perspectives on the same plane. But that's not really possible because clothing is already a three-dimensional object. You cannot do cubism with a three-dimensional object because it's an object. Cubism is two-dimensional objects, a painting, pretending to be three-dimensional objects, a bunch of naked ladies. In this show, Junya is creating three-dimensional objects that are pretending to be two-dimensional objects, pretending to be a different three-dimensional object. Say with me, I can see your eyes glazing over, do not give up on me. I think that Junya just looked at a cubist painting and felt that the little triangles and rectangles were pleasing. He wasn't taking inspiration from like the math of cubist paintings. He was taking inspiration from them just at aesthetic face value. Like if he was just simply saying like, man, brown shapes, that's nice. Haha, I should make clothes into brown shapes. I get the feeling that there's a lot of little geometric Easter eggs in Junya's work, but that'll have to be a different episode for a different day. Last thing, we went to the showroom for Junya after the show, like we always try to. And if your goal in life is to be a fashion designer that makes weird, beautiful things, you need to find a way to spend as much time as possible with clothes like Junya Watanabe. Danielle and I spend a lot of time around the work of young designers who want to be the next Junya, and we spend a lot of time around the clothes from the Comme universe, and the execution of these clothes is exquisite. For being so otherworldly and weird, these clothes are finished and well made. You would do well to study them. It is once again, I'm so happy to say that it is once again time for a brand that we have believed in on this channel since their inception. It is time for Zomer. Zomer's bright vision is more refined than ever. Their color palette continues to be thoughtful and exciting, and they've held themselves to a high standard in both design and manufacturing decisions from their very start. The thing that separates Daniel and Imru's work in my mind from other emerging brands is that they have the right intentions for what kind of company they would like to have. They have the correct kind of right intentions. They're not paying for insane elaborate sets yet. They are not hiring a social media person. They are focused on making great clothes. You would be surprised how rare that is. They want to make it clear that they are serious, like for real focused on pattern cutting above everything, and it shows. Over the last 4 collections, the sheer density of exciting pattern cutting that I have seen from them is more than I could ask for. And it is not an easy task for an emerging brand either. They want to work in hard mode because they understand that there is no easy way to make a successful brand, so they don't shy away from the challenge. The cuts this season are the best that they've looked to date. And that's something that hit me with a lot of excitement and relief when they started the show with a flood. And then you could see everything at once, and I breathed such a sigh of relief because honestly, y'all, with new brands, you're hoping for the best, and sometimes it doesn't work out. And it was like, okay, great. It felt like an appropriate amount of a flex. Like, check it out, y'all. It is good. We fucking did that. Okay, let's talk about the cuts. Zomer reworked a ton of clothing to be pattern cut to look like you're putting on a shirt backwards. I like that Zomer chose to do this idea. I see a lot of brands tackle this idea as like a fashion design kickflip, but it honestly feels most sincere here in the Zomer universe where, you know, we're not taking anything too seriously, but these clothes are not a joke. I think this tonally works for their childlike, playful approach. Another way Zomer played around this season was with these functional shapes of collars, kind of blowing it up and twisting it into tiers on a skirt. and a graphic swoosh at the hem of a dress. It's super fun, but the best part is that with their commitment to good execution, it looks like more than just like, oh, giant collar on a dress. It creates a meaningful shape. It's not just a finishing detail. And in case anyone thought that I wasn't into those skirts, Daniel and Imru, these are the best skirts that you have made at this brand to date. The shape here is just, mwah, I love these. And I've said that about one of your skirts before. This has replaced the King. The second best product that they've ever released are these glass beaded shoes from Fall 24, but hang with me. The third best product that they've ever released is this bag that isn't. It's a bag that's not a bag. This is super funny to me for a few reasons. There's something about it that's so self-aware of its own origin and creation. This accessory is just kind of like saying, yeah, we aren't a huge company yet, but we do have big goals. But for now, this is what we can do, baby. It struck me as a really smart way of embracing your circumstances while staying true to the playful parts of the brand. It's also interesting to imagine someone carrying just a little handle and pretending that there's a whole beautiful bag attached to it in public. It's an accessory that encourages you to pretend a little bit, which seems like it's exactly what Daniel and Imru want to encourage generally. The lamps were cute and kitschy in the best way, both as headwear and set design. I'm really glad that Zomer has the bandwidth to dress up their presentations, but I become even more reassured about their priorities when I see things like this. Their signature brightness is inevitably what makes them so attractive to follow closely, but they care a lot more about the clothes than anybody else that I know of their size. That's led us here to their fourth show and their nomination for the LVMH prize, which offers the potential to catapult them to a new level. Zomer is hungry. I love seeing and feeling this kind of drive from a brand.
Showroom.
We caught up with Daniel at the LVMH showroom.
So a lot of this was about things being backwards, the wrong way, like the end at the beginning and stuff.
Yes.
The idea of like the shirt that gets put on backwards, the button-up shirt that goes up the back. Originally, as far as I know, the oldest version of that I'm aware of is Martin Margiela doing a couple of things like that. But yours really seemed like they were cut in a different way.
Yeah.
Could you tell me a little bit about how you cut those shirts and those backwards pieces so that they actually fit properly on a human body and it's not just like a little gimmick?
Yes, no, of course. So we had the idea of going backwards and doing things upside down, reverse. So we started with styling, and then eventually we took that into the design process. But of course, indeed, like, we had to shape the armhole straight instead of a bit more bended, or, there were like little tweaks to the patterns. But then the headache started because we've sent the patterns to the factories, and the factories thought that we were doing the patterns wrong, so they started correcting them. So it was a bit pain.
You had to remind the factory who the designer was.
Yes, exactly. This is designed like to be the front, and then this is the back. So of course you need to shape the armhole correctly to still be able to move. And this is actually a woman's fit, so we did have to still have some sort of volume for the breasts. And then of course also the neck. So the neck we had to lower at the back, put it more higher at the front. But still, I wanted to create the illusion that it was just flipped back. But when you wear it, it should be like comfortable.
It needs to look like it was just an afterthought.
Yes,
but then there's a lot of technical
exactly,
stuff.
yeah. And then a dress that is inspired by a trench, but then also with an open back.
When you pulled it off the rack, I was like, oh, cool, a trench coat. But it is literally just a dress.
Yes, and then we have, of course, fabrications, different fabrications of it. So like one in a silk, one in a cotton, and a leather. Also here, for example, a skirt that is backwards, and then you have a shirt peeking out. So, like, we played with a lot of colors. So also these trousers, back to front.
No, wait. Hold on. Is this? It's part of the part of the pants.
The pants, yeah. So you can also take it off.
This is awesome, man.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We love being the channel that talks about fashion with the most depth in the industry, but along with that, I think it's worth getting a better idea of the overall fashion landscape as well. Welcome back to the lightning round for Fall Winter 2025 Women's, where we talk about clothes, except we do it extremely ultra fast. Christian Waynants has found a new place to take his feminine look, and it's drapier and cozier than ever. His subdued color palette was juxtaposed with his bold and interesting prints, which is a staple of his work. What I appreciate about Waynants' work is his ability to dress women of all ages. Women and their mothers would look equally great in this man's clothes. A Magazine curated by is not a fashion brand, but can y'all believe that they've been around for 25 years? The editor-in-chief, Blake Abbey, toured us through an exhibit to celebrate the anniversary of the magazine, full of items belonging to designers that have in the past had their own dedicated A-Mag issue, and have also come back to contribute to the 25-year edition. We have Yohji's cigarettes, we have Jun Takahashi's studded Birkin. What I've always loved about A-Mag is that they are, in the best way, so far from a traditional magazine. Their ability to expand out the universe of these designers without trudging through the same old lifestyle and celebrity dressing moments angle has always really impressed me. CFCL continues their exploration of ultra-casual yet exciting clothing with a particular focus on shape this season as well as bolder colors. While this collection is full of outerwear options, it's the dresses that play with the sheer fabrics and interesting cuts that are the most impressive part. These clothes might convince a risk-averse shopper to try something that's a little bit different, a needed part of today's work-from-home landscape that I think Yusuke Takahashi is trying to corner. Vaquera improves season over season with a more concrete wardrobe offering than ever before. The product jumps out. Never without their signature irreverence, models clutched gigantic pearls and were draped in the largest bras I have ever seen. I am proud to see some unique silhouettes and clever reinterpretations of Margiela, taking the shoulder-padded look from his spring 2007 show and adding in a bit of drape, as well as their signature styling, which looks more refined and better than ever. Veronique Leroy returns to the runway after years of quietly working on her product-focused brand. A brand which seems to make many women happy to subtly take on the overall shape of a human-sized doll. In this collection, Veronique successfully balances actual avant-garde experimentation with wardrobe staples. My favorite parts of the collection were when she, very subtly, clashes patterns and textures. I would love to see her elaborate on ideas like this. Stefano Gallici has adapted Demeulemeester's signature moodiness in this 36-look layering Olympics, once again elaborating on the genderless heritage of Anne D, outside of a few key traditionally feminine looks for women who remain the largest consumer of fashion. The Andy universe could easily accommodate this on anyone of any gender. Gallici's indie inspiration is seen through clothing that embodies 70s festival culture. Coperni's runway show took place many miles away from Paris city center in this arena which hosted 200 Twitch streamers who were broadcasting themselves playing Rocket League to their gargantuan audiences while Coperni's futuristic and truly cunty models walked between them. It wasn't just Rocket League, but that was the one where I was like, oh, I know that one. That's Rocket League. That's the one with the soccer and trucks. They called it a LAN party, which is something that my boomer ass is proud to say that I took part in growing up, where my friends and I would all hook all the original Xboxes together, sit in my parents' basement, and fight until 4 a.m. That's how LAN parties went. Lots of iconic women from video games were embodied in the clothes, worn by some of the most iconic models currently working. As always, Coperni is unable to remain quiet. Finally, Alessandra Rich is a champion for the ultra feminine look, this season blending a conservative style in the outerwear with a focus on sexy with lacy and sheer gowns and slips. I have not seen women's clothing attempting to do sexy in a way that is this effective and genuine in a long time. The sexiness here is not a cheap trick. It's a welcome part of Alessandra Rich's body of work that strives to capture the sum total of girliness. Thank you so much for tuning into the lightning round. Now back to fecal matter. This was a season of debuts and premiere collections, but one debut in particular was either the primary focus of your feed or you likely didn't hear about it at all. And either way, I want to emphasize it because this was the single biggest surprise that we encountered all season. Matière Fécale is a Canadian duo made up of Hannah Rose and Stephen Raj. If you're familiar with them, it probably means that you're longtime fans of them. They have a booming online presence of their own, and they're also part of the Owens Corp inner circle. And I do want to talk about something kind of serious here. Because Hannah and Steven have helped to shape the aesthetic at Rick Owens for a number of seasons, that's kind of led a lot of the conversation online about their introduction of their brand to be taken not as seriously as I think it should be. It may surprise you that Hannah and Steven have formal pattern cutting experience, and not like they've seen YouTube videos about pattern cutting. They met each other at pattern cutting school. Does that surprise you? If that does surprise you, I would challenge you to ask yourself the question of why that surprises you. I have a theory if that did surprise you. I think the internet has changed a lot of our subconscious prejudices. And one of those prejudices is that if something is aesthetically very loud and very well executed, we assume that the artist behind that execution is a vibe guy. If there's a great deal of visual drama in the work, it means they're just vibey. Like, they're good at making playlists, they're good at finding lit graphics, but when it comes to the hard skills that take years to learn, they just can't be bothered. And that just isn't true of Hannah and Steven. They have commercial pieces in this collection. It's what's going to keep the company afloat, but there are hard skills that are executed well in this collection. They can back up the showstopper ideas with scissors and thread. And that's a relief, because I think that we, just the people generally who really love art, have been let down so many times by phony type shit aestheticists that we've grown very suspicious of anyone who has good execution and a crystal clear vision. I think that's a shame. I mean, don't get it twisted. Daniela and I love an understated, well-cut cashmere coat, but the tides of culture are turned by skilled artists with extreme ideas and a clear vision. I am so relieved that Hannah and Steven waited 10 full years to present their first collection. Well, at least the first collection that's going to get manufactured. I like these pagoda shoulders. Tailoring anything on people that have a bust is really difficult if you play by traditional tailoring rules. I'm going to lay this out ultra simple and sloppy here. It's more complicated than this, bear with me. So if you have anything other than just a very flat chest, it creates two tailoring problems. The first one is a lapel gap, and that's where the lapel that's just supposed to sit very flatly along your chest creates this gap every time you move around. Like when you reach to get something, you're reaching up or whatever, it gaps in this big obvious way. The second one is that it creates a collar gap, and that's collar gap is just anything where the collar is not sitting snugly against your neck. If it starts floating around, that is not good. Even if you're lifting your arms up and stuff, there should be no collar gap. You can't see it because of my hair, but I have no collar gap. Collar gap, lapel gap, those are big no-nos in traditional tailoring. Hannah and Steven had goals this season that were going to break at least one of those rules, so they made the broken rules part of their goal. And Fical was most triumphant this season with their purposeful collar gap. Personally, I look at these and see a tailor simulating tech neck. That's the forward stretch of the neck that's caused by chronic phone use. Even in unstructured garments like the cream-colored knitwear, there's a little bit of extra ease built into the back of the neck. On other blazers in the show, the lines at the upper back form a cross in the center. The show notes say that cross imagery in the collection is somewhat symbolic of Hannah and Steven's childhood relationship with religion that was imposed on both of them. And what this cross functionally does, however, is visually separates your shoulder blades, which makes them appear substantially more prominent than they would in a standard cut jacket. This cut really emphasizes the boniness of your shoulder blades in this just beautifully creepy way. I love it. My single biggest regret this entire fashion week is that I did not make it to their showroom to examine these clothes in person. We will be correcting that next season. I really wish I could have at least slipped one of these on. And if you are looking at this and seeing a lot of inspiration from McQueen, both designers were happy to gush about their favorite designer after the show. McQueen's best late career shoe, the Armadillo, was given a radically slimmed down tribute this season. And technically, I do have to call that a tribute. If you look at the lines of them side by side, I really don't think this is a tribute in the normal sense. Tribute is when you just kind of put something by another designer into your show. This has enough change to it. I would just say it's a different model of shoe. But even still, Deborah Shaw still walked the show. Famous McQueen model Deborah Shaw, whose age is technically, according to Deborah Shaw, still unknown, walked the show. I love Deborah Shaw. Anyway, I would consider this to be an original design, but if we're talking about McQueen, the connection is definitely there. There was also Lee's horror-twinged views of birds in a few looks, including the look that was worn by Hannah herself. This was everything that Daniela and I look for in a premiere collection. I cannot wait for 6 months from now. I don't want to brag, but we're the only people on the fashion bus right now. Transport between shows is actually pretty difficult because we are in a major metropolitan city where traffic is a huge problem. Fortunately, there's really good public transit. That's usually what you see Daniela and I using. But if you're going from one calendared runway show to another calendared runway show, the Fashion Week bus is an option for you. We take it a lot. It's actually like a super nice amenity of coming here and covering it like as a journalist. And before you get any ideas, they like triple check your invitation before they let you on this thing. So it's not just like free transport to where a runway show is. We're going to one of our personal faves, which is Satoshi Kondo at Issey Miyake. Daniela and I still don't understand why he is not generally talked about as one of the best designers currently working, but no one else seems to think of him in these terms. We definitely do. As their ascent to the top of Fashion Week totem pole continues, Satoshi Kondo remains the most exciting designer working today. Kondo continues to make fashion that is all his own, while in line with the overall brand philosophy. Issey Miyake, the brand, is laser focused on fashion as industrial design. In the same way that all the industrial designers make functional items for daily use, they also manage to come up with some of the most uniquely beautiful ways of creating functionality. Issey Miyake's clothes are not focused on like what you should wear to a wedding or like, oh man, what should I wear for a first date? It is clothing for you to take on your daily life as you live it. Satoshi Kondo, separate from his mentor Issey, has developed his own language for you getting dressed. So this is what makes this collaboration with Erwin Wurm so relevant. Inspired by his 1-minute sculptures, Issey Miyake started their show this season in a way that is very them. A slow, gradual start with dancers occupying the runway space, blending in perfectly with the crowd that is trying to find their seats until they don't blend in so perfectly anymore. This is the second time that we've had this runway experience at Issey, and both times when Daniela and I finally noticed it, we frantically run to try to capture how beautiful and subtle it is. I was the only person on the floor with a camera, like trying to follow these dancers while like not getting in their way. And then like 18 other people came and copied me. And by that time I was done. I was like, y'all can have it. The dancers continue to move around the space, movement being another house staple at this brand. And eventually they found their way onto these platforms, marked with instructions with how the dancers are to interact with the clothing. They remove their dance clothes and shoes, putting them into these purpose-built cubbies in the platforms while following the instructions written by artist Erwin Wurm to interact with the daily world in entirely new ways. All of this is the backdrop for the absolutely fantastic collection this season. The way that Kondo expresses that new daily interaction is through his love of gestural elements in clothing. This is something that we've seen Kondo evolve into season over season, with glimpses of it in every show, but this one in particular felt predominantly oriented towards gestural design. Kanga pockets, chest pockets. Hand positioning in particular seemed to be front of mind here. And if you forgot what gestural design was, then you were not paying attention during the Courrèges segment of this video. My feelings are hurt. If Erwin Wurm is trying to get you to interact with daily things in new and interesting ways, then Satoshi Kondo is trying to make you interact with a kanga pocket in your suit. You've also never really mixed your running gear with your tailoring, but here it works brilliantly. Kondo goes into a new dimension where technical wear and tailoring can come together in this new form that compromises on neither. And maybe that's why the show is called Neither Nor. It's something entirely different. Whatever this fourth dimension is, Kondo's goals are becoming more interesting and in line with the industrial design side of Issey Miyake's heritage. Is there a way for you to put on one outfit in the morning that will serve all of the purposes that you will need that day? I mean, it used to be that people would go to the office all day long for work and then have to change for whatever they were doing after work maybe, but now, I mean, you might pop into the office for 10 minutes today and then just head back home. A lot of people don't go to the office at all now. The way that we're taking on work clothing here seems perfectly suited for this new reality. You look more than polished enough to be in a workplace while also looking like the best dressed person for miles. And while this is definitely optimized for people who live in more urban environments, I don't know any brand trying to tackle that same idea. This must just be an extension of the same idea that's been present on the Issey Miyake men's side for a while. And if this show is just the Issey Miyake way of reevaluating our functional lifestyles, that would still be an idea worthy of a runway show on its own. But the fashion here it's great. Like, if your workplace tailoring has very considered shoulders and the silhouette overall is very considered, you're not losing any of that. But instead of it coming in the inevitable shape of bulky shoulder pads, we're creating this entirely new shape that Daniela and I have not seen before by having the shirt and the jacket interact in this very sculptural way. Look at this shape. It's awesome. Like, you want details? Look at these split collars on the shirt. It's a different way of interacting with something that you're already very familiar with. Another take on that is this cute half twist of a collar before being buttoned back into place. Familiar but spontaneous. Here we go. Y'all ready to hear the white guy say some Japanese words? At some point in a designer's career, they're going to have to contend with the space between the clothes that they've designed and their wearer's body. So like the amount of space that's here, that is referred to in Japanese as ma. The opening looks are trompe-l'oeil of the actual true-to-life knits that are seen immediately after. We're trying to bridge the gap between the movement and the ma of the actual knitted clothes and trying to bring that movement into these printed 2D versions. And hand placement is one of the ways that you can create that effect. That ends up making you the missing piece to link the 2D with the 3D in this thought experiment. Opacity is a recurring theme of condos. It often coincides with layering, but my favorite use of it here was in these printed and pleated designs. It's the best part of the opacity theme mixed with the fan favorite pleated movement that the brand is known for. It somehow makes the delightfully light pleated look even lighter and airier. And if airy isn't really your deal, these dense pillowy looks also play with opacity. These ended up having their own beautifully bulky movement to them. This is, yet again, Satoshi Kondo's best show at Issey Miyake. He keeps one-upping himself. This show was tangibly better than the paper show that came 6 months ago. And if you can go back and check, we loved the paper show. It feels as though we're moving to a more tangible, applicable place conceptually while not ignoring the more abstract beauty of Issey Miyake, most prominently seen in the final looks, which were these stiff mesh alpaca wool yarn looks. I can see why these looks were saved for last. Soft but stiff, these looks sort of float around the body in this ma halo. These looks are like you took an inflatable balloon, wrapped yarn around it really carefully, covered it in Mod Podge, let it dry, and then popped the balloon. It is that idea, but perfect. At the press scrum, they brought out a rack of the collection, which allowed the journalists to take a closer look, which was great because people ran into the show a little bit late and we didn't get the best view this time. So getting an opportunity to see the clothes up close and personal, that was really appreciated. It always feels super easy to believe in the work that's coming out of this brand. Last thing, there was an extra sleeve theme that I actually thought worked quite well as a usable sleeve, but also as a little decorative element when either not being used or when tied around the body. But we have to point this out. This was Daniela's favorite part of the show. It's a little sweater for your shins. I feel like this was made for folks that work from home but have cats who dig up into their pant legs. It's now there's a little sweater for your kitty to discover down there. This is super playful and creative for the sake of it, which seems to align well with Erwin Worm's contributions to the show. Kondo will inevitably outdo himself again next season, as feels like the norm now, but I can't wait to see what else they have in store for us. In her fall offering for the House of Hermès, Nadège Van He creates visual interest in her clothes through a focus on this fairly rigid vertical line. The term line in fashion can refer to anything from the way that the buttons are arranged to general visual cues that you get when you're looking at the ensemble. Things like zippers, a print, finishing details. These kinds of things are what create a line. This is what we walked away from our showroom experience thinking about most. The best way that I can show you the line is through this dress. Outside of the fact that this is quite a plush garment, all this broguing is apparently done by hand. The line on this dress is emphasizing a closeness to the body in this simple column silhouette that creates a vertical line with this felt seam that runs down the center of the dress, splitting into a front vent that eases walking. Instead of having to put a belt around your waist and dramatically change the overall vertical line and silhouette, Nadège offers us something more subtle. This tassel detail brings your waist together visually, but maintains that vertical line. You can have the comfort of this simple garment without having to compromise on a feminine feeling through that waist illusion. The best part is that the cinched waist effect is being executed with one of the most masculine motifs in traditional dress with that hand-done broguing. Van He brings a chic boyishness to the women's wear that I have always really loved. Even though Nadège does not shy away from feminine staples such as a belted waist and T-length skirts, it provides women with the rigor and the gravity that is usually in fashion reserved unfairly for men. One of the ways that this can be seen is through this use of utilitarian felt, which in this season is made of wool. The broader theme of the show was the relationship between leather and felt. Nadege wanted to use something that had similar thickness and pliability to the famously elite Hermès leather. Wool felt serves as a backing in many leather applications. Most notably for this show and brand, felt pads are often placed underneath a leather saddle for support while on horseback. We're continuing to use the equestrian heritage of Hermès in a more down-to-earth way. And I love that Hermès is using felt here. It's sturdy, very humble, and the quilting throughout the rest of the show cements that this is ultimately related to the layers of a saddle. That layered saddle idea moves brilliantly into clothing as well, and especially for a fall-winter show. Exquisite, body-hugging cashmere knits are meant to be worn in layer upon layer in a very second skin-like manner. This collection is teeming with the layers that are meant to go after your cashmere base layer, like felt trousers and a felt jacket, complete with a quilted and padded leather lining, or a belted leather equestrian jacket and boots if it's a little less cold. And this is not the first time that we've seen the idea of leather working itself make its way into the women's collections. We've seen that in various styles of studding and broguing in past shows. Leatherwork is obviously foundational to Hermès. It remains the most sought-after offering among their various and equally impressive métiers. When you're trying to keep the nature of these traditional crafts alive, there's only so many ways to achieve that effectively. Let me ask you something for real here. How do you make tradition something that's exciting? Because usually, if we're being really frank, most people think of tradition as something that's outdated or matronly or whatever. So Hermès has this great solution. Everything is very traditional, but they add in this fetishistically conservative angle to things that can really spice it up if you know where to look. This show in particular is the most fetishistically conservative collection I have seen from Van He yet, and somehow surpasses the bright red studded leather show for Fall 24, which was also excellent. This collection is a masterclass from Van He on how to make the most impressive parts of tradition and heritage ultra desirable for people right now. And this fetish element of Hermès is not something that I am talking about for the first time. There's a famous quote from Helmut Newton, the fashion photographer, who said that Hermès is the world's greatest sex shop. And the thing that makes this as a topic so much more three-dimensional for Hermès is that one part of our lives that we all fetishize is the most no-nonsense maximum utility that we can find, which is always front of mind at Hermès. We can see that in everything from the use of the felt itself to these built-in scarves, to these knits that zipper open from the neck and the chest. No matter who you are, a built-in scarf and other functional details on clothes, those things are undeniably attractive. Fingerless gloves allow you to use your hands more effectively, but in this leather that makes them, kind of hot. And I want to go back to that broguing for a second, now that Nadege has flipped the switch in our brain from seeing this traditional motif as stuffy and masculine to quietly sexy. Nowhere is this fetishistic element seen more this season than in the brogued double-slit skirts with this corset-like detailing. When Van He moves this motif to the neckline and to the front of shorts and these open backs, it evokes this feeling of light restraint. Really beautiful stuff. And it is bag time. This new bag takes on an ultra-practical idea of a shoulder bag and a bag that you can just casually toss over your shoulder. This amazing hybrid bag was a great addition to the look of the whole collection. The Della Cavaliera bag is in the Elan shape, which just means it's the east-west version of the original Della Cavaliera. At Hermès, the term Elan just means that the bag is longer. There's also an Elan shape for the Kelly and the Constance as well. The Picotin has been cargo-fied in this felt texture for the first time, as is the Birkin. You don't need me to tell you this, but this iteration of the Birkin will be obsessed over by the heads. The good news, though, is that Alex Consani finally got her Birkin. Congrats, queen. The one that she carried in particular is made of chev leather, which is goat. You can usually confirm that on bigger bag models if you sort of see the spine of the goat in the middle of the bag. It's one of the more durable leathers that Hermès offers. These small boxes are a remake of a vintage Hermès bag model that I've seen on the resale market called the Trousse de Toilette, a toiletry bag basically. Have y'all noticed this trend where people try to take toiletry bags from designer labels and like kind of make them work as like an actual bag? So I think that Hermès leaned into that this season with the remake of the Trousse de Toilette, whose shape is pretty faithful to the original, and this insanely beautiful large cosmetics box that was perfectly designed to fit the cult favorite cosmetics and fragrances that Hermès makes. Lastly, the Hermès Bolide, a bag that inspired a million bags like it, but none that can live up to the original. It's rendered in beautifully stormy colors this season, but this one sticks out. It's a rare Russian leather that was rediscovered. It's what Hermès is calling Valinka leather. It is as elegant as it smells. Smoky, woody, and there's a whole write-up about it on the Hermès website, which you can check out. We were told that Nadège really likes this leather. Apparently it'll be available in the Bolide, the Hack, and as a notebook cover, which is a weirdly good use for that leather. I can't wait to see what else they make of it. It was really special to feel and see in person. This was Nadège Van Hee's best show at Hermès. Not like the best one that we've seen. This was the best collection of clothes that she has made at Hermès so far. It was fantastic. She only seems to be getting better season over season as she finds new ways to make ultra high quality look just really hot. Walking up to Thom Browne, who is not showing in Paris this time, but is one of the best couturiers working right now. So it's kind of a shame to actually miss it. Plus their showrooms are absolutely incredible because the technique is so heavy in these shows. You get a lot of benefit from being able to get really close to them and actually see what's happening. Thom Browne seems to be in a pretty heavy period of transformation right now. They're growing really, really fast, and what they're able to do is jumping leaps and bounds at a time for every single show. So we want to actually keep track of what those increases are and how they're being handled. Back with another spectacle collection featuring their distinct attention to detail and their quality. The quality is so incredibly high at Thom Browne that we find ourselves unable to stop thinking about it for the remainder of the week. And that's well-earned praise for the brand. We've seen multiple shows and now multiple showrooms, which has given us the very best understanding of both Tom's singular vision as well as his laser focus on product. Y'all. Or what if you go higher up on the East Coast than us to where Thom Browne is from, is it like yins? Like, how do you say you all? Yeah, we'll just do it as y'all. Y'all. Every single garment here oozes detail, continuity in these patchwork pattern pieces, this ultra detailed bird embroidery, this tennis dress on the bias with a fully matching bias set zipper. The fabrics. There are so many tweeds and so many types of tweeds that even the experience of going through these clothes feels like you're in the Kafka-esque infinite accounting room of Thom Browne. It's as if the team was trying to decide which tweeds specifically are going to go in the collection, and then they got it down to 25 and they were like, we cannot possibly cut another one. Look at them. We see a lot of Lesage tweed at Thom Browne. Lesage is, of course, known for their incredibly advanced multi-dimensional and multicolored tweeds.
It ends up just looking unlike anything else. It's so deep and complicated and beautiful to look at. It's kind of like looking at fire a little bit.
Yeah.
Where it's like your eyes are not really moving at all, but they're being stimulated so much.
And if it's not Lesage, then they get it from Zegna. Zegna, of course, recently acquired Thom Browne and has given them access to the best fabrics that they can make at their 115-year-old family-owned facility in Biella, Italy. Whenever I try to describe like the quality of Zegna fabrics, I just say they own a mountain. The company owns a mountain. That usually clears it up. Okay, so not only are these clothes of such incredibly high quality and holding such a high standard for themselves, but Thom Browne's look has proven to us time and time again that it's very expansive and can include just about anything. Sports and the human body, seaside towns, the island of misfit toys, jock straps, haute fucking couture. It begs the question, what does not fit into the Thom Browne universe? Tom is one of our few current American heroes of fashion design, and he is representing us so well, which I'm so grateful for. America is not in the best way right now. Thank you, Tom. Tom showed this collection in New York this season as he remains the chairman of the CFDA, but I am so glad that they maintain a showroom in Paris because it would honestly be a shame to leave them out of the season's roundup. While this Paris showroom is always an absolute highlight of ours, Thom Browne was easily the most exciting and my favorite show to come out of New York this season. And I'm sure that if he was showing in Paris, he would still be competing for my top spot. We never get to say what we're kind of disappointed that we couldn't see during Fashion Week because it's like, why take up time in the video complaining?
multiple seasons in a row, I have been like, damn it, I really wanted to see Hodakova. We are now, for the first time, finally going to see Hodakova. Also, it is a beautiful day in Paris. This is like springtime. It feels incredible right now. I'm in like such a good mood. I'm always in a good mood when in Paris Fashion Week, but this is like especially nice.
This was a very well-attended show. Everyone showed up to see what dramatic and exciting moodiness Ellen Hodakova Larsen could whip up this time. The exciting thing about this space that Hodakova is trying to occupy is that it's very different in the industry. This is new, wonderful gloominess that stays far away from being melodramatic, and it stays far away from being cringe. The emotional tone that it strikes lines up well with the world of string instruments and this solemnity that you see a lot in the orchestral world, with this unquestionable respect towards your conductor and the high pressure atmosphere and the deep reverence towards the music that you're playing. And J.K. Simmons threatening your life. We see a model walk out wearing a whole ass bass. And while creating moments like this is important for small designers to get more eyes on their work, the bass making an appearance helped to reinforce the somewhat threatening atmosphere, and I totally mean that as a compliment. In this type of emotional context, it would be sad to not see some attempt at avant-garde ideas, and I'm glad that Hodakova goes for the experimental without wringing her hands about it too much. She really said belts and belt loops and trousers in as many ways as you can think of. I think that her instinct towards tackling concepts like this in a collection should be encouraged, and it's the kind of thinking that led to my favorite idea of hers, the full boot suit from her prior season, spring 2025. The best executed idea in that same tradition for this season was the head hole made out of a folded pair of trousers, and that is seen both in a safe for work version and a slightly not safe for work dress version. I actually really liked this idea. I also love the slightly fuzzy two-piece sets. This works well for her brand as a commercial product, and after I've now been in the room with a lot of her product before, I can tell you that what I saw of it is airtight. The construction, the finishing, Hodakova's product, A+. Other small things I noticed were her fur hat looks that resemble Margiela's hat looks from his Fall 2004 collection. The notable difference between the execution is how this idea is expressed in a different tone. It's far gloomier than at Margiela. And I like that about Hodakova. There's this sincerity behind the moodiness that feels fresh, and she's embracing it without any like memes or irony. It's not hiding behind a joke. And the base look, despite being loud, is not like a ha-ha type joke. The way that Hodakova sees it, it's a restrictive garment. It's meant to seem like a trap for the wearer rather than like a viral bit. The violin as a headpiece is a physical way to interpret not being able to stop thinking about your performance. The drum skirt is just you being right in the middle of it, but unable to get out of that frame of mind. The instrument strings all over the second half of the show feel cage-like in some looks and expressive of spiraling thoughts in others. I can't wait to see more of this. I'm happy to know that a brand that is this thoughtfully dreary can resonate with people. Uma Wang comes through with textiles that make you glad that you're wearing her clothes. When I begin the process of writing about Uma's collections, I remember the time that I almost very irresponsibly spent $900 on an impulse purchase because the pants that she had made that I was trying on were so unbelievably comfortable that I just could not imagine my life without them. Fortunately, Daniela talked me off the ledge. They were also like a full size too small for me. Like I should not have owned them, but I was like, wow, these just feel so great. In fashion, we don't often talk about the way that clothes actually feel on your skin. Most folks are so busy trying to find a way to appear a certain way to others that the feeling of the clothes themselves takes a back seat. This is where Uma is able to corner the market in women's wear. She offers clothes that feel incredible and have a ultra distinct voice behind them. She's the kind of designer that would make a coat say that you buy because you do like how you look in it, but then a few weeks into owning it, you find yourself naked in your closet after a few glasses of wine, trying it on just so you can wrap yourself up fully in the strange, warm, captivating textile. If you haven't tried that before in your own life, you should. Like a couple of pieces in your wardrobe, just like see what it feels like naked. It's actually really weird. But everything that I've described so far, this is standard for Uma Wang. This season in particular, Uma is targeting a time in women's lives when they most deserve to be comfortable in their clothes but are least likely to, and that's pregnancy. The starting point for this collection is one of the most famous depictions of pregnancy in art history, and that is the Madonna del Parto by Piero della Francesco. The resulting collection has a lot of coats that would look quite natural over a woman's pregnant body, but I would go as far as to say that some of these looks would look best if they were on a pregnant woman's body. And with that said, these clothes solve a major problem that a lot of women do face, and that is wasting pregnancy clothes. The honest truth is that you usually can't keep wearing your regular clothes when you are pregnant, and most women don't intend to keep wearing their pregnancy clothes once they're no longer pregnant. For a lot of ladies, that means that they want cheap and easy clothes for that 6-ish month period. And cheap clothes, unfortunately, feel awful against your skin. A lot of these clothes would round out a pregnancy wardrobe, make you look and feel purposeful doing what will be a difficult time for you physically. And then when your newborn is out in the world screaming and throwing up or whatever babies do, you still get to look incredibly chic. You can even remember the pregnancy fondly in the subtle references to the original Madonna del Parto painting in the patterns of the garments. I thought this was actually a very tasteful touch. Hey there, sports fans. It is time for Noir Que Nina Mia, and we just saw Junia a little bit ago. All the Comme brands are on the same day. You have Comme des Garçons mainline, Junia, and Noir Que Nina Mia. Junia was extra crazy this morning. Comme des Garçons is very typically crazy for their mainline. This might be the first fashion week ever where Noir Que Nina Mia is the most conservative of all the brands showing today. Like the most staid and subtle and stuff. It'll be really interesting to see. Everything surrounding this runway put us in gear to receive a playful collection of clothes. Kay's work is usually quite playful, but we are in excellent form this time around. Danielle and I walk into a room of black lights where everyone's smile was hilariously amplified.
Everyone's face looks kind of like they have pink makeup on.
Yeah, seriously. Secondly, just before the first look emerged, the soundtrack started, which was composed by Hakushi Hasegawa. How do I put this? Hasegawa pairs perfectly with Noir Que Nina Mia. Very rare, this season has show notes. In the past, Kay has been very against the idea of explaining himself, and at other times, he's against the idea of having inspiration in the first place, which is usually what show notes are here to explain. Like, typically a designer would release show notes and it would be like, I went to a Robert Mapplethorpe exhibit 6 months ago and it was really moving to me, and so now it's in the collection. Or like, sunsets are so beautiful, the natural ombre of the sky, yay. Like, that's what show notes usually are about. So this season, for Kay's show notes, he said, quote, mysterious, surreal, a kind of feeling that is uncertain and hard to understand, focusing on handwork, utilization of resin to achieve expressions impossible with just fabrics, end quote. The title of the show is Fantasy. So the show notes don't sound like they're very helpful, but a glow-in-the-dark collection that notes its use of resin is usually not a place where handwork is emphasized. So what do we see here? The show begins with a glowing resin sculpture that kind of looks like when entomologists pour cement into a massive ant colony. We remember that resin is essentially just plastic. It's a favorite material by studio artists in the last 100 years because it's really easy to manipulate when it's in its liquid form, and then it dries and stays permanently how it is. For contemporary art, resin has kind of become the god particle. The way this group of ensembles is shaped, along with the glow and the matching crazy materials making up the more conventional clothes underneath, I became more enthralled with yet another part of these looks. These strange wearable objects reward you looking into them. It's kind of like if someone told you to stop looking at the painting and look into the painting instead. It's like there's really not a lot of paintings that would apply to. This one in particular is a great example. There's the surface of the object that we can see, and you can allow your eyes to sort of skim over it, but there's a three-dimensionality to it that's quite rare in fashion. I actually thought I was overthinking this until I saw this particular look where the spikes, the stalactites, where the little fingers are sticking out. So the shapes coming off the look are one color, but then the base that they're attached to has this beautiful smattering of color. Or we have like this barn burner of a look where Kay seems to have tried to emulate the visual interest of fire in a still object that becomes even more visually engaging when it's on a person in motion. There's also a handful of looks in this collection that reward a closer look. They open themselves up to you when you're patient enough to not just look at them, but look into them. The rest of the show is some looks that kind of retread some classic looks for Kay, some that bring some variations to the brand that make you go like, OMG, that's so Noir Que Nina Mia. And then there's a few in here that I personally theorize are little tributes to the American fashion writer Kristen Bateman. She regularly wears Nina Mia's work and loves it enough, apparently, to get married in it. Kristen is the best example of a style icon that wears Nina Mia's work as far as the Western audience is concerned. And speaking of the audience for K, half of the fun of these collections is waiting to see them starting to appear out in the real world. The real heads do buy the crazier pieces and they wear them out in the real world. You'll probably see them in 6 months at the next street style photography for Paris Fashion Week. It's awesome. So for those of you who are fully plugged in to the lore of Undercover by Jun Takahashi, you probably spent the entirety of the most recent women's live stream screaming at your phone with joy. But for those who have not unhealthily obsessed over this brand, I'm going to give you a little bit of setup.
Did you know it's technically pronounced under fucking cover?
Oh my God. She.
Oh yeah, sorry, I was saying it to her, but also you. Yeah, just so you know as well. Undercover has been operating for a long time. This show was actually their 35th anniversary celebration. And especially when a catalog is that extensive, when it goes that far back, it's pretty rare for the designer to just come up and tell you what his own favorite show that he's done is. But here, we got that. I can't think of another time that has ever happened, actually. The day before this show went live, Jun Takahashi took to Instagram to tell us that this show is a reimagining of his show from fall 2004. The title of that show is But Beautiful. We could dive into a whole fucking deal here about the But Beautiful show and its heritage and lineage and stuff, but we're going to try to keep this as relevant to this current show as we can. To help put it in a painfully simplistic way, this show helped to cement what a lot of Undercover's aesthetic would become defined by. Like if you were a young undercover obsessed teenager in, say, 2010, and 5 days a week you wore your one graphic tee by Undercover that you got with your family on vacation in Japan, when you put it on, you probably thought about the But Beautiful collection. Those aesthetics were shaped by two main points of inspiration for the show. The first is the general style of Patti Smith, one of the human conduits of the global punk movement. And if you are just now seeing Patti Smith's outfits for the first time, whatever you think of them here in 2025, you should understand that for millions of people out in the world, millions of people who make the current visual things that you love, this is unquestionably cool. This is, to some people, the very definition of cool. The second main piece of inspiration for the collection is the work of a French artist, Anne-Valérie Dupont. It's so clear why Takahashi took inspiration here. I think that many of the pieces that Dupont makes serve as really good metaphors for what Jun Takahashi does if they've never seen his work before. There's been 2 other shows since the original But Beautiful show that elaborate on the same theme. Fall 2025 is the 4th installment of the But Beautiful series. Now Jun gets to show us how his sensibilities have evolved from when he was 35 making the original collection. Patti Smith is still there, and the inspiration of Mademoiselle Dupont has changed into a full-blown collaboration. Dupont has created a great deal of shoes for the collection that themselves take inspiration from animals, but still have this beautifully mangled look to them. But Beautiful is a song that was originally written in the 1940s and has dozens of covers of it by artists that you have definitely heard of. Probably the most likely that you've heard is the cover by Lady Gaga with Tony Bennett. The lyrics are pretty simple, basically saying that love is painful sometimes, but primarily, even when it does hurt, love is beautiful. The song is usually covered in a kind of optimistic way and usually has like a love ballad tone, the kind of vocals where you can like hear the artist smiling while they sing the track. But for this show, Jun Takahashi chose to include Nina Simone's cover of But Beautiful. That recording is notably darker in tone than most other versions. It's strange to think this, but if a designer returns to a classic runway in order to recreate it for a big anniversary, it does make one think that they've started with early retirement, and that they themselves perhaps can feel the distance between who they were when originally making that collection and who they find themselves to be now. And to get a little personal here, for fashion people between the ages of like 33 and say maybe 50, or at least for me, seeing these motifs redone in such a no-holds-barred way made me a little emotional. Undercover, like this Undercover, is a great deal of what I was personally obsessed with when I first got into clothes. This is kind of what made me fall in love with it. To see it done up in this way, especially when I saw it in person, kind of gives that pain that, like that good pain that nostalgic things have to them. And if you'd like more high quality info about Undercover's history from fashion writers who know their shit, go dig around on archivepdf.net. It's great. They have a lot of good information about these old Undercover shows. Whenever we cover newer designers, we're always looking for that moment when they really hit their stride. And I think this season, Mame Kuraguchi had that moment. But importantly, the factors that led me to believe that are different than what you might think. I mean, is this her single best collection? I will let you be the judge of how this ranks in Maiko's overall body of work, but I want to focus on one thing. The tip-off that made me say that Kuraguchi-san has hit her stride is in her process. Since I first started seeing Maiko's work a couple of years ago, she's taken a massive interest in Japan's material culture, specifically through traditional Japanese basket weaving, ceramics, and this season, for the record, it was inspired by the history of Japanese lacquerware. We've talked about this before, but this is something that could fuel a full decade of collections for Kuraguchi. Every season, or maybe once a year, you change, get a new craft, and then you just repeat the process. It's a great concept. Maiko would learn about the history of Japanese ceramics, for example. She would explore the major pieces that are kept in museums, the proprietary techniques, the major innovations, and then she would do material research on her own. She would take everything that she'd learned and translate that into a new collection of clothes. Of course, every season, the major Mame Kuraguchi hallmarks would still be present. Tasteful dip dyeing, a distinctive soft curve near the shoulders and neck, that same runway location that we've come to associate with Maiko's work, the restaurant Ogata Paris. But recently, Maiko changed her process a little bit when she discovered a book about a year ago that's called Shapes in Japan. To quote the show notes, the book explained the close connection between traditional Japanese materials and shapes, as well as the spirituality and beauty contained within cultural artifacts. As a result, Kuraguchi began researching the various forms hidden in her daily life, end quote. Maiko seems to have taken this very seriously. She started noticing the shapes of rocks around her studio. She started looking closer at the art objects in her home. Apparently, she retrieved a small bean off the side of the road. All the objects she chose were photographed and then blacked out so that all you could see was the silhouette. And when she did this, you could no longer tell what was a tool, what was an object of beauty, what was trash. I mean, in some cases, you couldn't even tell what was natural versus man-made. Maiko told us that she was able to, through this process, gain a newfound appreciation for objects and their inherent beauty. But I think more profoundly, she said that she started gaining an appreciation for the relationship between the material that an object is made of and the form that it takes. I mean, it's not a coincidence that pebbles are shaped the way that they're shaped. She named a few items in the show notes that got tributes in the show itself through small details. Seashells became earrings. The bean that she found is still being used as this little piece of hardware for a few looks. And again, this change in process came about a year ago. It was for last season, but I feel like in this season, we're able to see those changes really blossom into results. You can see that most in how much braver Maiko got this season concerning her own shapes. There's a few jackets that sit off the back of the neck in such a way to frame the model's head just in this beautiful way. It gives the wearer a sense of poise that's pretty rare in contemporary fashion. But the most extreme proposals in the collection were these padded coats. Some of the more abstract ones seem to allow a wearer to take like a throne of throw pillows with them as they go out. I can't directly connect the dots between this epiphany about material and form and the shapes of these coats in a tidy way for you. And maybe on some level, Maiko maybe couldn't explain that either. I haven't asked her. But what I like a lot is that this collection doesn't just have a little theme, contain some touchstones of that theme, and then have a sensible color palette. I like that this collection came with a bit of personal growth for the designer that made it, and I like that the results are a little messy. These are welcome changes. And speaking of messy, do y'all mind if I close this out by talking about a very sexy dress? Most folks do not think of Mame Kuraguchi as sexy, but look 10 is very sexy. At first glance, it's not overtly sexy. It's got a little bit of room to breathe around the body. It's a bit sexy, but it's not a showstopper. That is, until you consider the little bit of red lace that connects the top and the bottom half of the skirt. It's kind of reminiscent of kitsugi technique. Remember, this is the Japanese way of mending broken pottery with gold to highlight the imperfections and the history of the object. And in this dress, the connecting section is made of red lace. And lace, if you're doing it by hand, it's such a precious material that it's kind of a miracle that it existed at all before modern machinery. If I were to find a fabric equivalent to the preciousness of gold, it would probably be lace. And because of the semi-sheer nature of lace, it adds this kind of sneaky sexiness to this dress. The shape of the dress, again, it's not skin tight. And the placement of the red lace being where it is means that the semi-sheer stripe flashes little sections of skin so quickly that it kind of makes you question if you really saw what you just saw. The official video and our footage thankfully didn't capture any moments that were too salacious. Frankly, this is the kind of sophisticated, subtle, tasteful sexiness that you only get with Meiko Kuraguchi. What a phenomenal dress.
Very excited. Meryl Rogue, who was featured in our very first Paris Fashion Week trip, is doing a runway show. So from even before we started going to Paris to now, which is our 12th Paris Fashion Week, Meryl Rogue has been a part of that story pretty much the entire time. She has really good sensibilities. There really are not any other designers like her. She's still a very small company, but has a lot of experience at some really great houses. I'm really excited to see what she can do in the runway format.
Meryl Rogue is tapping into a part of your life that you might look back on and cringe. Like, do you remember that one Picasso quote that everybody loves saying where it's like, oh, it took me 4 years to learn how to paint like Raphael, but a lifetime to learn to paint like a child? Meryl is speaking to us through this collection and saying that you don't need to cringe. You were actually dressed better back when you were a kid, and you're capable of dressing that well again. A particularly engaging goal of this collection is to help us keep a childlike view on style. Like, I think every child on earth has independently had the idea of like, OMG, everyone shut the fuck up. I am going to, for back to school, I'm gonna get my mom to buy me one pair of Converses that are purple and one pair of Converses that are blue. And then I'm gonna like take the purple one for one and the blue one for my other, I'm gonna fuck the whole game up. That's it. Back to school is over. I've won. But then your mom won't buy you 2 pairs of Chucks, so you have to compromise your vision and just tie different colored laces onto your blue Converses. The proposals in this runway show are not literally the choices of a child, but more of an advanced elaboration on that same way of thinking. Layering goes further still with these shoes that appear to have socks stretched over them. And while this is the distant cousin of the Balenciaga sock runner, this really is its own idea because it doesn't feel like frighteningly surrealistic. It feels more like a styling move by the girl in middle school who has too many pet rats. Turns out some of the coolest women that I know now were the pet rat girls in middle school. Layering generally is done in a few other ways, like with this knit top that looks mega chaotic in the styling for the runway, but is pretty clearly meant to just be worn on its own as a crop top. Pretty beautiful. There's also these studded belts that kind of visually balance themselves out by adding another hanging strip of leather on the other side. That's a pretty small detail, but I really hope that this becomes product. It's an excellent idea, like studded belt as a bow. A lot of these garments lend themselves well to this like, what is going on style of layering. Contrasting French cuffs is a move that I haven't seen in a long time, but on this outfit, it works really well because it makes it seem like the sleeves are one layer, the cuffs are another layer, and this knitted base layer is the third. The contrast sleeves make things seem a lot more chaotic than they actually are, and if you aren't familiar with Meryl's body of work, that's where a lot of the magic comes in, is where you look at it and think like, oh my gosh, I could never, but then you actually try the product on and they're reasonable proposals that look great on you. The clothes seem like they're bursting with Dr. Seuss style wackiness, but a lot of her work is quite comfortable and approachable. We see the same technique employed in these jumpers that have these exaggerated big ribbed mock necks. It's one piece, but the observer of your outfit might assume that you're just really good at layering. And speaking of layering, there's some pants that you can unbutton and wear flap down, which I'm going to take as a little tribute to one of Meryl's heroes, Miss Miuccia Prada, specifically a move that was recently introduced at Miu Miu of wearing these almost panty-like high-waisted things as shorts on their own. And these Meryl pants allow you to wear those and show them off as another layering element to your extremely advanced woman connecting with her inner child type outfit. This look here is absolutely a great example of little girl who got dressed for the day without supervision. We get little cute glimpses of this raw, unfiltered source of inspiration. It's worth repeating, Meryl was one of the first designers that we ever interviewed on this channel, and it was awesome getting to reconnect with her work. We made our way over to a venue in the 8th arrondissement to see Rock Hwang's newest collection. We always know to expect a mix of draping and tailoring, some deconstruction, and a charming girliness that makes his clothes so popular among women. Yeah, congratulations, really beautiful. So you went pretty structural in this show for a lot of the pieces, which seems to kind of be where you're heading a little bit based on the last few shows. Could you kind of point me towards the looks that you feel like you really hit what you wanted to hit as far as structure of those garments is concerned?
Right. I think I have to kind of say that what is a first look that really assembles the idea and the theme, because I think we are known for, of course, the trench, but I think the practicality of the garment and how we cut it. And I think here that I wanted to give something that has a real kind of like structure and protection, something that has kind of like almost that you can imagine wearing daily, but I wanted to contrast that and really give a new sculptural kind of appeal to it. So using the hard medium and also softer kind of like chiffon to create those kind of like a new silhouette, I think that was kind of the new studies and take.
And those, of course, like inflate a lot as the models walk. Exactly. And they're able to kind of take on this new shape that sort of depends on what their body is doing, which is interesting. Exactly. This is pretty interesting. Can you talk about that for a moment?
So I think this is something that I wanted to kind of play with, because I think the idea of the bodies and how we cut the garments, I think that just kind of is a symbolic thing. That because we see the body every day in our studio, and then I wanted to kind of reimagine how this could be represented. It's not just the garment itself, but then as a kind of symbol and as a kind of like, you know, as a protection that we always kind of imagine with our garments. So so we kind of like carved it on our bodies and then just kind of recut it and then just kind of painted sculptural touch.
And then for looks like this, you've been getting more into what I've been calling flu, but you might have a different name. Does flu work?
I think for me, yeah, I mean, it works. I mean, it's something that we really enjoy, because I think we always kind of try to have a bit more couture kind of like techniques injected into our DNA. We are just kind of being a little bit more creative on things that we wanted to just kind of, you know, just show our passion for what we do. Yeah.
And then for this one specifically, this is still trench material, right? So it's the cotton and the gabardine?
Yes, that's correct. It's a dead stock trench coats. And then we just wanted to cut it into strips and strips, so it's almost like 300 meters, and then we just kind of like reworked it on each level to create a new form.
And you're using it almost like the way you would use tulle, I guess. What did you learn about cotton gabardine? Because I mean, it's never used in this application ever. What did you learn? Was it really difficult to work with in that way, or what did you learn from doing this?
It's heavy, first of all. So you need a little bit of lifting to work on that. As well as I think it's just the idea of something that, you know, it's the medium that I love. It's almost like when you're cooking, it's something that you love, but just finding a new way of invention.
If you could tell us something that you know now that you've learned recently that you really did not know in your first couple of collections, what's something that's really been beneficial to you that you didn't know before?
I think for me is that, you know, because I always have this burst of ideas each time, every day, that I wanted to do something and wake up and just cut in different ways. But then to have a real kind of like focus on what I want to do and which material or medium that I want to use, I think that was kind of the key difference that I have learned.
You get focus.
Recently. Yeah, I get more focus and more edited on things that I do like to do. So I think that's just kind of the things that I think in life as well, but also I think it shows in my collection.
Rock, it's always a pleasure.
Please, meet me again.
Yeah, thanks so much for having us. Welcome back, sports fans. It is time for Acne Studios Défilé Super. I think generally Acne Studios, at least when I was coming up like in my 20s, Acne Studios was talked about as like the place that you get your first designer piece from. And for a lot of men especially, that absolutely was true. But in the last few years, I feel like they've grown up a whole lot and kind of developed their own voice that is now powerful enough in the zeitgeist that it's getting copied a lot. Also, it is too hot for this coat today. This is a very unusual early March. This was our first time with Acne Studios, the brand, the fashion brand actually, because what you may not know is that originally they started out as a creative agency. I feel like no one really takes the time to find out what Acne is because people sort of assume that it's a given. I mean, it's just been around for so long. Acne Studios, more than any other brand I can think of, is dependable. But after finding out about their industrial design background, their impeccable aesthetic sensibilities, and all the little details that have built up the outward universe of the brand have come in great relief. Nowhere is that more evident this season than the set itself. One of the things that Acne shows are known for is their pleasing set design. Engineered by a Swedish design duo named Front, the runway was a bigature of a city skyline with rocks covered in an organic mossy green crochet. Neither of those elements look like they would if they were the real thing. Acne took away the things that made them themselves, and in that way, both of them matched. It's this setup for a big city log cabin dichotomy that's done up in this aesthetic vacuum that makes it contemporary. Acne Studios, always dependable. The reason that jumps to mind immediately as a description for this brand is because of their well-beloved hero product, denim. If your first ever designer clothing purchase was a pair of Acne denim, please leave a comment about it. This seems to be a universal experience for fashion people, and we tend to be hard to please. Everyone tends to think of their favorite pair of jeans, or at least the first serious pair of jeans, at least as reliable. And you have this special closeness to them because they look great and because you can just throw them on without even having to think too hard about it. But fashion people usually are not satisfied with just jeans. While remaining Scandinavianly modern, they've taken that dependability from your favorite pair of jeans and tried to expound that out into their whole offering on the runway. Where creative director Johnny Johansson makes experimental decisions, it's always couched in this reliability context. Armholes and shoulders jump out as the primary place that Johansson wants to experiment this season, but a jacket is still a jacket here. Now it just has these doll's wardrobe-like articulated shoulders? Is that a thing? Either way, we're looking very doll-like, very stuffed animal even in the fuzziness of these doll-like clothes and the little bears in the prints. The music for this show is the queen of my heart, Björk, and her incredible song, Human Behavior, which apparently was the inspiration for the entire show. Fun fact, she wanted to come to this show and was definitely invited, but couldn't make it because of a scheduling conflict, so she remixed her own song specifically for the show. What an honor. I would have died. In the music video, Björk is wandering through this surrealistic forest alongside a giant stuffed bear. She goes into a cabin, eats some porridge, she flies to the moon at one point. It is a very standard Björk music video. It seems like Johansson was very inspired by that. Very inspired? It seems like Johansson was very inspired by that for the show. This is my channel, and if you don't like the jokes, if you could please wait it out just a little bit longer. Hang on, please. Björk was doing a rural versus urban thing in that music video, and that seems to have inspired Johnny to do the same thing here. It's reliable clothing, but with exciting twists. This is a sweater vest with a giant cable knit bow, an overcoat with giant buttons. So we're doing this playful childhood stuffed animal Björk thing with the giant buttons and bows while creating interesting clothing proposals while also being reliable and dependable enough for these to become people's favorite garments. It's all tinted with childlike elements, but it isn't childlike enough to make it obvious without knowing the stuffed bear inspiration. Felted boots contrasted greatly with these thigh-high ostrich boots, both of which were a very welcome sight. The Fair Isle sweaters looked great in both the stuffed animal shoulder and horizontal padded, is it a sweater version? The Fair Isle knits are a great inclusion to ham up the rural contrast for the show. Dresses laced up the front instead of the back were very well executed. I liked the childlike thinking here. And the garments with the pliable wires in the hems, which I saw as a detail in both cotton and leather garments, those added a whimsy to otherwise pretty commercial clothes that people would be happy to buy. These leggings with the knees cut out are honestly hilarious. It's almost like, how dare they make leggings with the knees cut out? But at the same time, how come no one has ever actually done that? And why does it work so well here? Acne Studios works differently than any other brand in the industry. Their goals are to create the coolest, yet most wearable casual clothes on earth. And this is why you'll never see Acne Studios worn on a red carpet. You'll never see an Acne Studios gown. The goals here are just different. We love talking about how designers like to do things differently. I do feel like I've been told this so many times by so many people that I can say it with confidence right now. Hey, you, the person working on a sewing project, you're doing so good. Oh my gosh, it looks beautiful. Congratulations. I know you're not done yet, but it looks incredible. Congratulations. I've just been told by so many people that they have our work on while they're working on finals for fashion school or just working on a sewing project at home. I love that. That makes me incredibly happy. whether you are working on a creative project or just like locked in, taking notes, just like watching this on the couch, on the flat screen, hopefully, I really appreciate you watching the entire thing. You have given us the gift of your time, and we don't take that for granted. Daniela's here for this segment.
Hi, everyone.
And we're just going to talk about our favorites. That's usually how we do the outro for the whole thing, to kind of motivate people to go the entire way through, is to kind of see us talking about our actual favorites. Favorite show, favorite single piece. Hopefully the two are not from the same thing. What was your favorite show this season?
I think my favorite all-around show was Balenciaga.
Very cool. Why is that?
Almost as always.
Yeah. You're obsessed with them, though.
I think he's a really thoughtful guy. I think he doesn't really get a lot of credit for that in particular.
Yeah. I feel like Balenciaga is one of a few different brands that almost has this like cult thing around it, where, I mean, obviously, like if someone gets a lot of stuff from a single designer, it's kind of a cult anyway because of the sheer price of the shit. But like with this, I feel like it's either a you get it or you don't thing with Balenciaga, and you very much are in the get it camp.
Wow, thank you. I certainly try to get it.
Obviously.
But in terms of like new and upcoming designers, my favorite show was Marie Adam-Leenaerdt. I'm very proud of her.
Yeah, she really showed up this season. It's crazy.
So yeah, those are my two. If I had to say two, those are my two.
My favorite show overall was Rick Owens. And I haven't selected Rick Owens in the past, I think, at the end of these. I don't think I've selected him since we started doing this.
This might be your first time.
Just because it's like, growing up, I was like, I'm so completely, totally obsessed with Rick Owens that it was almost like a given that it was like the favorite. I mean, Rick Owens has been the first segment in these videos more times than any other designer easily.
And there's a reason for that.
Yeah, there's definitely a reason for that. He's extremely consistent, and his team is really, really good at what they do. But this time, just because there were so many garments in there that were like my actual favorite thing he's ever made, and there's so many variations on it, those diagonally slit leather hoodies that just look like they taste so good. I just kind of like had to give it to him, and because I couldn't choose a single thing, as if I'm in the market for those hoodies. I don't even want to know what those things are going to cost. But because there were so many great versions of them, like the cropped one with the bigger shoulders that was red, and then like the white hoodie that just looks like as it gets dirty, it's going to get so beautiful. And then there's this really great gray one and black ones that were reflective just enough and stuff. I kind of couldn't choose between those things. So I'll just say that my favorite show overall was the one that was full of things that I couldn't choose.
Do you have a favorite new emerging brand?
Favorite emerging brand? I don't think ERD counts for emerging anymore. I think they're at this point quite established, but very independent. I didn't look, and I can never remember what we've seen if I'm just trying to remember. Let me look. I would have to give that to Zomer. It has to be Zomer. Their pattern cutting is great. It's very deconstructed. It's very like cool guy sensibilities. I mean, it's a women's wear brand, but like you can tell that Imru and Daniel kind of come from this tradition of, I'm actually a cool fashion guy, actually. So actually, I'm actually pretty cool, even though I am really into clothes, actually. So it's very cool how cool I am. They kind of come from that tradition of like, I'm obsessed with designers whose names are hard to pronounce, and like I've been on forums, and I'm like ultimate cool guy type stuff, but they're making very joyful garments, which I think that genre of guy, of like cool fashion guys, of which I kind of came from wanting to be that. They take themselves really seriously. Like as a group of guys, we tend to take ourselves way too seriously and want to look too badass and all this stuff. And it's very refreshing to see someone who I think comes from that camp sparkle so much and it be so effective. What was your favorite single garment that you saw?
I have a tie.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I kind of can't. One of my two favorite garments was a look in the Comme show with the multi-layered like dresses, tank tops. There's like two versions of this look. That is the best thing that I have seen in person that Rei Kawakubo has ever designed.
Very cool. I'm sorry, the original runway look or the product version?
The runway look.
Yeah. It's insane.
Yep. That
takes it.
It's so good.
Yeah.
Second is the high neck stuff from the Givenchy debut. I thought that was very, very beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Brunch power move.
Yeah, the brunch power move. Yeah. I think my favorite single piece that I saw all week was the only piece of deconstruction that I've ever seen from Albert Kriemler, where he kind of did this trench coat deconstruction. And I really liked him doing tasteful deconstruction, just kind of like reimagining a trench coat as like a little cropped jacket thing. Please make boy sizes. Please, Albert, please. He's never going to make boy sizes, I don't think.
What are you wearing right now?
Yeah, this is my Jeffrey B. Small suit. It's literally my favorite garment that I've ever owned in my entire life.
And what else?
Jeffrey B. Small suit. I would be wearing a Jeffrey B. Small Alashon Breath cashmere shirt if I had an extra $8,000 laying around or whatever it is. This is a Zegna cotton cashmere button-up that you found for me for like $20. And I love how like melty and washed it is. Like this one you can tell has been through somebody else's washing machine just on hot. Like they did not take care of it at all. And fortunately with this specific shirt, it treated it pretty well. Hermès pretty much every single day. I have Hermès on, the little twilly invention that I have. The twillies are usually used to protect the bag handles. And then I threw a bunch of palladium hardware from Hermès on there. And now I have this cool thing that I wear around my neck every day. The base shirt is a used Yan Yan Vanessa t-shirt that is cotton and hemp. And the hemp, I'm not going to show a close-up of it, but the hemp has made it where as it's been worn more and more, it's gotten eaten up really, really beautifully. But yeah, the Jeffrey B. Small suit is in fact my favorite garment that I've ever owned in my entire life.
In case y'all were wondering, I'm wearing a Rick Tommy tee and some Lemaire jeans.
Yeah, she looks like, you really do, you're like cool fashion bitch today, honestly. You got the whole look going on.
Thank you.
What glasses do you have on?
Oh, I have Loewe guy glasses.
My baby girl looks great in those glasses and is also quite private, so deal with it. Hey, y'all, if you really get value from this, as always, I'd ask that you reflect that value on the Patreon. We do have a whole episode recently where Daniela and I, in this setup where she's behind the mic, answer questions from people on the Patreon. There's a whole extended video that's pretty long. It's like, how long is that thing? It's like 30 minutes, I think. It's pretty long. There's more of those to come too. We have 2 more that have been filmed. We just got to buckle down, find time to edit them. But yeah, if you really get value from this, I just ask that you reflect that value. We cannot continue doing this if we are not making money from it. And the Patreon is the way that we make money. There is no like secret funder of things. There is no sugar daddy or regular daddy that's just, saying, oh, as long as you guys have the passion, you just go. It's a business. We got to make it work. So I would love for you to be a part of that. Thank you so much. Anyway, love you guys. See ya.